My name is Mia. I am 29 years old and I work as a night receptionist at a budget motel on the outskirts of Seattle. My parents called me the dumb one at every single family dinner for the last 2 decades. My sister got a Harvard degree, she did not earn a Tesla, and keys to my dad's $15 million mansion. I just sat there in silence, eating my cold soup until a lawyer walked into the room, handed me a contract and said, "Your app just hit $45 million. That was the moment their laughter stopped forever. Before I tell you how I turned their cruelty into my empire, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have ever been the black sheep of your family. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I love reading your stories and connecting with you. Now let me take you back to last Saturday night when everything changed. The rain was pouring down on Seattle, making the lights of the city blur against the windshield of my rusted Toyota Corolla. I was driving toward Lake Washington, where my parents lived in a $15 million estate that looked more like a museum than a home. The driveway alone cost more than everything I owned combined. Inside, they were throwing a lavish party to celebrate my older sister, Jessica. Apparently, she was launching a fashion startup. In reality, my father, Richard, had just written her a blank check to play CEO for a few months before she got bored. I parked my car around the back near the garbage bins so the guests would not see the dented bumper and the peeling paint. I had just finished a 10-hour shift at the motel and my eyes burned from exhaustion. I looked down at my clothes. I was wearing my faded grey uniform because I did not have time to change, and honestly, I did not have anything fancy enough to fit in anyway. My shoes were muddy from the walk and my hair was pulled back in a messy bun. I took a deep breath, staring at the glowing windows of the mansion. I could hear the music and the laughter from here. It was a world I was born into but exiled from. I walked through the service entrance, avoiding the main hall. The house smelled of white lilies and expensive champagne. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting a warm glow on the 100 guests mingling in their designer tuxedos and evening gowns. I spotted my father standing near the fireplace, holding a glass of scotch. He looked regal and commanding, the very picture of a successful real estate mogul. Beside him was Jessica, glowing in a gold sequined dress that probably cost $5,000. She was laughing, her head thrown back, soaking up the adoration. My father clinked his spoon against his glass, and the room fell silent. He raised a toast and said to my beautiful daughter Jessica, the only person in this family with the vision and drive to carry on the legacy. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I stayed in the shadows. He did not say my name. He never did. To him, I was just a ghost haunting the hallways of his success. I watched as he put his arm around her, beaming with a pride he never showed me. Suddenly, my mother, Linda, appeared beside me. She did not hug me. She did not ask how I was or why I looked so tired. She just scanned my uniform with a look of pure disgust and shoved a silver tray of champagne flutes into my hands. She whispered, harsh and cold, "Since you are late and dressed like a beggar, you might as well make yourself useful. Go serve the guests near the patio. The caterers are busy." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the tray on the marble floor and walk out. But I did not. I needed to keep the peace. I needed a place to stay if my landlord evicted me next week. So I took the tray. I walked among the guests, offering drinks, feeling small and invisible. I was their daughter, but tonight I was just staff. A tall man in a grey suit reached for a glass and looked at me. He frowned slightly, trying to place my face. He asked, "Wait, are you not the other daughter? I remember you from the Christmas card years ago." Before I could answer, my mother swooped in. She placed a manicured hand on the man's arm and gave a fake, tinkling laugh that chilled my blood. "Oh, ignore her. That is just Mia. Poor thing is a bit slow. We're just happy she can hold down a simple job at a motel. We do not expect much from her, unlike Jessica. She's safer doing manual labor." The man nodded, looking at me with pity, before turning back to my mother. I stood there frozen. The tray shook in my hands. The champagne rippled in the glasses. Slow, simple, safe. Those were the words they used to cage me. They painted me as the failure so Jessica could shine brighter. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I lowered my head and walked away, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. They saw a waitress. They saw a failure. They saw a disappointment. What they did not know was that in my backpack, Hidden in the servant quarters was a laptop held together by duct tape, and on that laptop was the final code for Nexus. While Jessica was shopping for purses, I was building a logistic optimization artificial intelligence that was about to revolutionize the shipping industry. While they were sleeping in silk sheets, I was debugging complex algorithms in a break room that smelled of bleach. I had spent 4 years sacrificing sleep, food, and social life for this. I was not slow, I was exhausted, I was not simple, I was focused, and I was definitely not safe. I was a ticking time bomb, and the countdown had just begun. Their insults fueled me. Every time they called me stupid, I wrote a better line of code. Every time they ignored me, I made my system faster. Tonight they laughed at the waitress. Soon they would be begging the CEO. To understand why I stood in that mansion feeling like an intruder, you have to understand the lie my family has told for 20 years. They convinced the world and themselves that I was the slow one, the screw-up, the burden. But the truth was far more twisted. My intelligence was not non-existent. It was just inconvenient. Growing up inside the Miller household was like living in a reality show where the script was written before I was even born. Jessica was cast as the star. She was the golden child with the blonde curls and the winning smile. I was the supporting character meant to fade into the background. When we were in high school, Jessica struggled to pass basic algebra. My parents hired her private tutors from the university, paying them $300 an hour to do her homework for her. They bought her grades. They donated a new wing to the private school library to ensure she made the honor roll. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my room with secondhand textbooks I bought from a thrift store, teaching myself calculus and advanced coding languages. I remember the day I came home with a nearly perfect score on my SATs. I was 16. My heart was pounding with a rare moment of hope. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the thing that made my father look at me with pride. I walked into the kitchen and placed the paper on the marble island. My mother was arranging flowers, and my father was reading the Wall Street Journal. He glanced at the score. He did not smile. He did not say congratulations. He looked at me with a cold suspicion and asked, "Who did you cheat off of, Mia?" When I insisted I studied, he just shook his head and said, "Do not lie to us. We know your capabilities. Jessica got an 1100, and she had the best tutors money can buy. There is no way you did better than her without cheating." He threw the paper in the trash. That was the day I stopped trying to prove them wrong and started planning my escape. I realized that to them, my success was an insult to their investment in Jessica. But the real breaking point, the moment that truly severed my soul from theirs, happened 3 years ago. It was a rainy Tuesday in November. I was asleep in my dorm room at the state college I was paying for myself when my phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was my mother. Her voice was not panicked. It was angry. She told me to get to the hospital immediately. When I arrived, the waiting room felt like a courtroom. My father was pacing. My mother was fixing her makeup. And there was a lawyer I had never seen before. They took me into a private room. Jessica was sitting on the bed looking perfectly fine, just a small scratch on her forehead. But she was crying hysterically. My father closed the door and blocked it with his body. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your sister made a mistake. A big one. She was driving the G-Wagon. She had too much to drink. She hit a parked car and then a telephone pole." I stared at them confused. I asked, "Is she okay?" My mother snapped at me. "She's physically fine, but her reputation is at risk. She's launching her jewelry line next month. She cannot have a DUI on her record. It would ruin the brand. It would ruin us." Then came the words that still haunt my nightmares. My father stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "We need you to say you were driving." The room spun. They wanted me to take the fall. They wanted me to go to jail, to have a criminal record, to destroy my own future, so Jessica could keep playing princess. They looked at me as if it was the most logical solution in the world. I was the expendable one. My life had no value to them, so why not use it to patch up the holes in hers? For the first time in my life, I found a backbone I did not know I had. I looked at my father and said, "No, I will not do it." The silence that followed was terrifying. My father turned a shade of purple I had never seen. He told me I was ungrateful. He told me I owed them everything for the roof they put over my head as a child. But I stood my ground. I refused to be the villain in my own story just to keep her the hero in hers. Because I refused to go to prison, they found another way to punish me. They used their connections to get the charges reduced for Jessica, but the insurance company refused to pay for the car because she was intoxicated. The G-Wagon was totaled, a $120,000 loss. My father blamed me. He said if I had just taken the blame, the insurance would have covered it because I was sober. He said I cost the family money, so they presented me with a choice. I could either sign a promissory note agreeing to pay them back every single cent for the car plus interest, or they would cut me off completely and use their legal team to sue me for back rent for the years I lived in their house after I turned 18. I was 26 years old. I was scared. I did not know my rights. I signed the paper. That is why I live the way I do now. That signature was a chain around my ankle. For the last 3 years, I have been living in a basement apartment in the worst part of Seattle. It smells of mold and damp earth. The windows are ground level, so all I see are the boots of people walking by. I have 3 locks on the door because the neighborhood is dangerous. My furniture consists of a mattress on the floor and a folding table I found in an alley. I work the night shift at the motel because it is the only job that allows me to code during the quiet hours. Most of my paycheck goes to my father. Every month, I transfer $2,000 to his account. If I miss a payment by even an hour, he calls and threatens to garnish my wages. The rest of my money goes to 2 things: instant ramen and server costs. My body runs on sodium and caffeine. I have lost weight, my skin is pale from lack of sunlight. My clothes are falling apart. But none of that matters, because in the corner of that damn basement on a folding table sits my true life, a second-hand server rack humming quietly in the dark. It is the heart of Nexus. Nexus is not just an app. It is a logistics platform that uses machine learning to predict supply chain disruptions before they happen. It is brilliant. It is complex. And it is expensive to run. Every dollar I do not give to my father, I pour into cloud computing power. I have gone days without eating so I could pay for more storage. I have walked 5 miles to work in the rain to save bus fare so I could upgrade the firewall. My parents see a daughter who lives in squalor. They see a receptionist who wears worn-out shoes. They think I am paying for my stupidity. They think I am exactly where I belong, at the bottom of the food chain. They have no idea that the girl eating noodles in the basement is sitting on a digital gold mine. They have no idea that while they were sipping champagne and laughing at my uniform, I was 1 server update away from changing the world. I was starving my body to feed my mind. And I was ready to starve a little longer if it meant I could finally buy my freedom. The smell of burning plastic is a scent that will stay with me for the rest of my life. It happened 3 days before the most important meeting of my career. I was sitting in my damp basement apartment, wrapped in 3 blankets because the heating had been cut off again. My eyes were glued to the screen of my 7-year-old laptop. I was running a final stress test on the Nexus algorithm. The fans were screaming, struggling to cool down the processor that was crunching millions of data points. And then it happened. A sharp pop, followed by a hiss. The screen flickered once, twice, and then went black. A thin wisp of gray smoke curled up from the keyboard. I sat there in total silence. My heart stopped. I pressed the power button. Nothing. I pressed it again harder. Nothing. I unplugged it, took out the battery, put it back in, and prayed to a God I had not spoken to in years. Please, just turn on. Please, just give me 1 more week. But the machine was dead. The motherboard had fried completely. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. That laptop was not just a computer. It was my lifeline. It held the local backup of my entire source code. I had cloud backups, of course, but to present the demo to the investors, I needed a machine powerful enough to run the simulation in real time. Without a computer, I had no demo. Without a demo, I had no investment. Without investment, Nexus would die, and I would be a night receptionist for the rest of my miserable life. I checked my bank account balance on my phone. $12.45. I had spent my last paycheck on server fees and paying off the interest on the car debt my parents forced me to sign. I needed a new laptop. Not a gaming rig, but something decent enough to handle the code. I needed $2,000. It might as well have been $2 million. I sat on the floor and cried for exactly 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face and stood up. I had no friends to borrow from. I had no credit score to get a loan. There was only one place I could go, the bank of Richard and Linda Miller. Driving to my parents' estate always felt like driving to an execution. My stomach churned as I pulled my rusted Corolla up to the massive iron gates. I punched in the code. The gates swung open slowly, revealing the long winding driveway lined with manicured hedges. This was the house where I grew up, but it never felt like home. It felt like a museum where I was the only exhibit that didn't belong. I parked around the side so I would not ruin the aesthetic of the front entrance. I walked into the kitchen. My father was sitting at the island eating a steak. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car. My mother was flipping through a magazine sipping red wine. They looked up when I entered. There was no warmth in their eyes, just a mild annoyance like I was a delivery driver who had arrived at the wrong time. My father put down his fork. "What are you doing here, Mia? We did not know you were coming." I took a deep breath. I tried to make my voice sound steady, but I could hear the tremble in it. "I need to ask you for a favor, Dad. A business proposition, actually." He raised an eyebrow and took a sip of his wine. "Business? You work at a motel, Mia. What kind of business could you possibly have?" "My laptop died," I said, quickly before I lost my nerve. "I have been working on a software project, a logistics application. I have a meeting with potential investors in 3 days. I need a new computer to run the presentation. I need to borrow $2,000. I will pay you back with interest as soon as I get the funding." The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother let out a short, sharp laugh. She covered her mouth, but her eyes were mocking. "Oh, honey, are you still playing with computers? I thought you gave that up after high school." My father did not laugh. He just looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and stood up. He walked over to me, towering over my frame. "Mia, look at me. You are 29 years old. You are a receptionist. You check people into cheap rooms for a living. That is your reality. This software thing is a fantasy. It is a hobby. And I am not in the business of funding hobbies for people who refuse to get real jobs." "It is not a hobby," I argued, my hands balling into fists. "It is a sophisticated algorithm. I have interest from serious people. If I can just show them what it does, I can change everything." He shook his head slowly. "You always do this. You always look for the shortcut. You think you are smarter than everyone else. Jessica works hard. She understands the value of networking and brand building. You just hide in a basement and type. $2,000 is a lot of money, Mia. I'm not going to throw it down the drain just so you can play pretend for another week." I felt the tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Dad, please. I have never asked you for anything for myself. I paid for my own college. I am paying for Jessica's car accident. I just need this one chance." He sighed a long, exaggerated sigh of disappointment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his money clip. It was thick with cash, hundreds of dollars tightly bound together. My heart leaped. Maybe he was going to help me. Maybe he saw the desperation in my eyes. He peeled off a single bill, a $50 bill. He did not hand it to me. He let it drop from his fingers. It fluttered through the air, drifting slowly until it landed on the cold marble floor between my muddy sneakers. "There," he said, his voice flat and final. "That is $50. Take the bus back to your apartment. Stop dreaming about things you cannot achieve. You are not a tech mogul, Mia. You are the girl who fixes the coffee machine. Accept it." I stared at the bill. Ulysses S. Grant staring back at me from the floor. The humiliation was physical. It felt like a punch to the gut. He was not just refusing to help me. He was telling me exactly what I was worth to him. $50. I was about to turn around and walk out. I was about to leave the money there. But then I heard the roar of an engine. The front door burst open and Jessica came in. She was a whirlwind of expensive perfume and shopping bags. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. She did not even look at me. She walked straight to my father and threw her arms around his neck. "Daddy, you are the best," she squealed. She held up a bright orange box. The logo was unmistakable. Hermes. My father's face transformed instantly. The cold mask he wore for me melted into a warm, indulgent smile. "Did you get the one you wanted, sweetheart?" "Yes." Jessica beamed, spinning around. "The Birkin in ostrich leather. It was $15,000, but it is an investment right. It matches my new Tesla perfectly." Thank you for letting me use the black card. I promise I will wear it to the launch party. It elevates the brand image so much. $15,000. He had just spent $15,000 on a handbag for a daughter who had never worked a hard day in her life. A daughter who had crashed a car and let me pay for it. A daughter who was playing CEO with his money. And I was standing there begging for $2,000 to build a future. Jessica finally noticed me. She looked down at my worn-out sneakers and then at the $50 bill on the floor. She smirked. "Oh, hi, Mia. Did you drop your lunch money?" My father chuckled. He actually chuckled. Mia was just leaving Jessica. She needed a reality check. The room felt small. The air felt thin. I looked at the orange box. I looked at the $50. And something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of the final thread of hope being severed. I realized in that moment that they did not just favor Jessica. They actively wanted me to fail. My success would mean their narrative was wrong. If I succeeded, it would prove that I was not the dumb one, and they would never allow that. I slowly bent down. My knees cracked in the silence. I reached out and picked up the $50 bill. It felt crisp and cold in my hand. I stood up and looked at my father. I did not scream. I did not cry. I looked him dead in the eye and saw him flinch just slightly. There was something in my expression he had never seen before. It was not sadness. It was the absolute absence of love. "Thank you for the investment," I said softly. "Investment," my father scoffed. "It is charity, Mia." I did not answer. I put the bill in my pocket. I turned to Jessica, who was already busy unboxing her purse. "Nice bag," I said. "Enjoy it while you can." "What does that mean?" she asked, frowning. I walked out the door without looking back. I sat in my car in the driveway for a moment. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. I looked at the $50. I drove straight to an internet cafe. I could not buy a laptop, but I could rent computer time. I spent that $50 on 12 hours of high-speed access on a gaming PC at a local center. I sat there, surrounded by teenagers playing shooter games, and I coded like a woman possessed. I moved my entire environment to the cloud. I set up a remote desktop protocol so I could run the demo from my phone if I had to. That night I did not sleep. I did not eat. I used the anger as fuel. Every line of code I wrote was a screw you to my father. Every bug I fixed was a screw you to Jessica. They thought they had crushed me. They thought that by denying me the money they had killed my dream. But they had done the opposite. They had taken away my safety net, which meant I had no choice but to fly. They bought a purse. I built an empire. And the best part was they had absolutely no clue what was coming for them. The clock was ticking, and the debt they owed me was about to come due. 3 a.m. at the Emerald Motel is a specific kind of purgatory. The lobby smells like stale coffee, industrial lemon cleaner, and the distinct musk of desperation. The fluorescent lights overhead hum with a low insect-like buzz that burrows right into your skull if you listen to it for too long. Outside, the rain was hammering against the glass doors, turning the parking lot into a blur of neon signs reflecting in oil puddles. This was my kingdom, the kingdom of the forgotten. I was sitting behind the chipped laminate counter wearing my polyester uniform that was 2 sizes too big. My name tag sat crooked on my chest. To anyone walking in, I was just the night clerk, the girl who hands you a key and does not ask questions about who you are bringing to your room. But that night, I was not just a clerk. I was the architect of a new world. My manager, Rick, had strictly forbidden personal use of the front desk computer. It was an ancient desktop that wheezed every time I opened a browser window. But since my laptop had fried and my father had thrown his charity money on the floor, this dinosaur of a machine was all I had. I had installed a remote desktop client on it, hidden deep in the system folders where Rick would never look because he barely knew how to check his email. I was running a simulation for Nexus. My fingers were flying across the sticky keyboard. I was in the zone, that rare, beautiful state where the world falls away and there is only logic and structure. I was testing the routing algorithm, specifically the way it handled unexpected variables like weather delays or sudden road closures. It was beautiful, On the screen, colorful lines were weaving together like a digital tapestry, finding the path of least resistance. I was so absorbed in the data flow that I did not hear the elevator ding. I did not hear the footsteps approaching the desk. A throat cleared softly. I jumped so hard I nearly knocked over my cold cup of coffee. I slammed my hand down on the mouse, frantically minimizing the window to hide the code. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked up expecting to see a drunk guest needing a replacement key, or maybe a drug dealer looking for a refund. Instead, I saw a man in a charcoal gray suit. He looked out of place, not just because of the suit, which was clearly tailored and expensive, but because of the way he carried himself. He did not have the slumped shoulders of our usual clientele. He stood straight, calm, and alert. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a two-star motel off the interstate. "I apologize," he said, his voice smooth and deep. "I did not mean to startle you. I just needed some extra towels for room 212. The heating unit is leaking a bit." I scrambled to stand up, smoothing down my uniform. "I am so sorry, sir. I will get those for you right away. Room 212? I can move you to another room if the leak is bad." He waved a hand dismissively. "No need. It is late and I have an early flight. Towels will be fine." I turned to grab the towels from the shelf behind me. As I did, my elbow bumped the mouse. The minimized window on the screen popped back up. The Nexus simulation filled the monitor, a complex web of nodes and edges pulsing with data. When I turned back with the towels, the man was leaning over the counter, staring at the screen. His eyes were narrowed not in anger, but in intense focus. I froze. Panic surged through me. If he told my manager I was using the computer for games, I would be written up. "Is that a game?" he asked without looking at me. "No," I said, quickly reaching for the mouse. "Just a screensaver. I am sorry." He caught my hand, gently but firmly. He stopped me from closing it. "That is not a screensaver. That is a dynamic routing protocol. And unless I am mistaken, it is solving a variation of the traveling salesman problem in real time." I stopped breathing. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He had gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes. That suggested he spent a lot of time reading fine print. "You know what this is?" I whispered. He smiled. A small, intrigued smile. "I have been in logistics for 30 years. I have seen every supply chain software from Oracle to SAP, but I have never seen an interface like this." "Who wrote the source code?" "I did," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. It was the first time I had ever said it out loud to anyone who might understand. He looked from the screen to me and then back to the screen. He pointed at a cluster of red nodes. "Why did the algorithm bypass the primary distribution center here? That is the most direct route. Because of the weather data," I explained, forgetting my fear. I pulled up the secondary layer of the map. "See here. Historical data suggests a 90% chance of ice on the pass during this window. The direct route saves 2 hours in distance, but carries a 40% risk of a 6-hour delay. The algorithm chose the southern route. It is longer by 40 miles, but the variance in arrival time is less than 5 minutes. It trades speed for reliability." He was silent for a long moment. He watched the simulation complete. The efficiency score popped up, 99.4%. He let out a low whistle. "That is impossible." "It is math," I said, feeling a surge of pride I had not felt in years. He looked at me then. He looked at my name tag. "Mia, you are the night clerk here." "Yes, sir. And you built a heuristic engine that outperforms the industry standard on a hotel computer at 3 in the morning." I shrugged, feeling self-conscious again. "I work with what I have." He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a leather case and extracted a business card. It was thick, heavy, cream-colored cardstock with embossed black lettering. He placed it on the counter. "My name is Arthur Dawson," he said. "I run a venture capital fund based in San Francisco. I was stuck here because of a cancelled flight. I think that might be the luckiest thing that has happened to me all year. Call me Mia. We need to talk about this." I stared at the card. It felt like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. A venture capitalist. "Here, in my lobby?" "Thank you," I stammered. "I definitely will." He picked up the towels. "Do not delete that code," he said seriously. "It is worth more than this entire building." He turned to walk toward the elevator. I felt lightheaded. I felt like I was floating. Finally, someone saw me. Finally, someone saw the work, not the uniform. And then the front door crashed open. The bell jingled violently. A gust of wet wind blew into the lobby, followed by a man who looked like a bulldog chewing a wasp. It was Rick, my manager. He was not supposed to be here until 6. Mr. Dawson stopped by the elevator. I froze. Rick stomped in, shaking his umbrella all over the floor. He looked at Mr. Dawson, then at me, then at the computer screen, which was still displaying my code. "What is going on here?" Rick barked. "Sir, I was just helping this guest," I started to say, helping him with what Rick yelled, marching behind the counter. He looked at the screen. "What is this garbage? I told you, Mia. I told you 1,000 times. No personal browsing. This computer is for reservations only. It is not browsing," I tried to defend myself. "It is work. I just needed to run a quick test." "Work?" Rick laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your work is to smile, check people in, and clean the lobby. This," he gestured at the screen, "is you wasting my electricity and ignoring my paying customers." Actually, Mr. Dawson interrupted, stepping forward. She was not ignoring me. She was providing excellent service. Rick ignored him. He was on a power trip, and I was his favorite target. He turned on me, his face red and blotchy. "I have been watching the cameras from my phone, Mia. You have been on this computer for 3 hours. You have not mopped the floor. You have not restocked the coffee station. You are stealing time from me. I am sorry, Rick." I said, my voice trembling. "I will do it right now. I just wanted to finish this one thing." "No," Rick said. "No, you are not going to do it right now. You are done." My stomach dropped. "What? You are fired," he spat. "Get your purse, get your junk, and get out of my motel. Rick, please," I begged. "I need this job. I have rent due. I have nowhere else to go. Please, I will never touch the computer again." Mr. Dawson stepped closer. "Sir, I think you are making a mistake. This young woman is highly intelligent. You should be proud to have her on your staff." Rick turned on him. "Look, buddy, you paid for a room, not an opinion. This is my business. She is my employee, and she is fired." He turned back to me and pointed a fat finger at the door. "Out. Now. Or I call the police for trespassing." I looked at Mr. Dawson. He looked shocked. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe to offer me a job on the spot, but Rick stepped between us, blocking his view. "Go on," Rick shouted. I grabbed my purse from under the counter. I grabbed my coat. I did not look at Rick. I could not. The shame was burning my face like acid. I walked out from behind the desk, the place where I had spent every night for the last 2 years. I walked past Mr. Dawson. He tried to catch my eye. "Call me," he mouthed. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped out into the rain. The cold water soaked through my thin uniform instantly. I stood in the parking lot shivering, holding my purse against my chest. The neon sign of the Emerald Motel buzzed above me, blinking on and off. I was fired. I had $80 in my bank account. My rent was due in 3 days. I had no laptop. I had no job. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the card Mr. Dawson had given me. Well, it was wet now, the edges starting to curl. Arthur Dawson, managing partner, Horizon Ventures. I looked back at the motel lobby through the rain-streaked glass. I saw Rick deleting my files off the computer. I saw him smashing the delete key over and over again, erasing the local cache of my simulation. My heart shattered. But then I remembered the cloud. I remembered the backup I had made on the gaming PC. He could fire me. He could kick me out into the rain, but he could not delete what was in my head. I walked to my car, my shoes squelching in the puddles. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I was homeless. I was jobless. I was alone. But as I looked at that soggy business card, a strange feeling washed over me. It was not fear. It was clarity. I had hit rock bottom. The floor had fallen out from under me, and the only thing left to do was to climb. I started the engine. The car sputtered and coughed before coming to life. I did not know where I was going to sleep tonight. Maybe in the back seat. Maybe in a Walmart parking lot. But I knew where I was going tomorrow. I was going to call Arthur Dawson. And I was going to make Rick regret the day he called me a waste of time. I put the car in gear and drove away from the Emerald Motel, leaving my old life in the rearview mirror, fading into the wet grey night. The eviction notice was taped to my door in bright orange paper that seemed to scream at the entire neighborhood. I stood there in the hallway holding a box of instant noodles I had just bought with my last $5 and read the words over and over again. Writ of possession. Immediate vacating of premises. My landlord, Mr. Henderson, did not care that I had lost my job the night before. He did not care that it was raining or that I had nowhere to go. He only cared that my rent was 14 days late, and he had found a tenant who would pay on time. I had exactly 2 hours to pack my entire life into the trunk of my Corolla. It did not take long. When you are the family disappointment, you learn to travel light. I packed my few clothes, my toothbrush, and the hard drive containing the backup of my code. I left the mattress. I left the table. I walked out of that basement apartment and sat in my car watching Mr. Henderson change the locks. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. It was not sadness. It was the feeling of being erased. I was 29 years old and I did not have a bed to sleep in. I sat in the driver's seat for an hour, staring at the steering wheel. I ran through my options. I could sleep in the car, but it was November in Seattle and the temperature was dropping near freezing at night. I could go to a shelter, but I had heard horror stories about theft and I could not risk losing my hard drive. That drive was the only thing of value I possessed. It was my lottery ticket, and I had to protect it with my life. So I did the one thing I promised myself I would never do. I turned the key in the ignition and drove toward the lake. I drove toward the mansion. Pulling into the driveway felt like admitting defeat. The house loomed over me, a massive structure of stone and glass that cost more to heat for a month than I made in a year. I parked around the back out of sight and walked to the kitchen door. I knocked. My hand was shaking. My mother opened the door. She was wearing a white tennis outfit, though I knew for a fact she had not played tennis in 15 years. She looked at me, then looked past me to see if anyone had seen me arrive. "What do you want, Mia?" she asked, blocking the doorway. I swallowed my pride. It tasted like ash. "I need a place to stay, Mum, just for a week, maybe 2. I lost my apartment." She let out a long, exasperated sigh. She did not move to let me in. She leaned against the doorframe and crossed her arms. "We are not running a shelter, Mia. We told you this would happen. We told you that playing with computers and working dead-end jobs would lead to this. You made your bed, now you want to sleep in ours. Please, Mum," I begged. "I just need a roof. I will stay in the garage. I won't come in the main house. I won't bother anyone. I just need time to get back on my feet." She tapped her finger against her chin, considering. It was not a look of compassion. It was a look of calculation. She was wondering what she could get out of this. "Well," she said slowly, "it is actually convenient timing. Jessica is getting engaged next weekend. You know Preston, right? The attorney from the firm downtown." I nodded. Everyone knew Preston. He was a 30-year-old partner at a corporate law firm, rich, handsome, and completely soulless. He and Jessica were the perfect match. "We are hosting the engagement party here," my mother continued, "and the maid just quit. She said the workload was too high. Can you imagine the ingratitude? So here is the deal. You can sleep in the garage. On the cot, but you have to earn your keep." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What do I have to do? Everything she said, smiling a cold, thin smile. "You will take over the maid's duties until the party, cleaning, laundry prep work, and during the party you will serve. If you do a good job, we might let you stay an extra week. If you complain, you're out on the street. Do we have an agreement?" I looked at her. This was my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, and she was negotiating my shelter like a business transaction. But I had no choice. I had the meeting with Arthur Dawson looming, but until that check cleared, I was a beggar. "Yes," I whispered. "Thank you, Mum." She stepped aside. "Don't thank me. Just get to work. The laundry room is piling up." For the next 5 days, I became a ghost in my own childhood home. I slept on a canvas army cot in the garage next to my father's vintage Porsche. It smelled of gasoline and tire rubber. At night, it was so cold I could see my breath. I wrapped myself in old moving blankets and worked on my code on my phone, typing with numb fingers, praying the battery wouldn't die. During the day, I was the help. The humiliation was designed to be precise. My mother didn't just want the house clean, she wanted me to know my place. She made me scrub the grout in the master bathroom with a toothbrush. She made me polish the silver service for 12 hours straight until my hands were cramped and gray with tarnish. But the worst part was Jessica. She treated me worse than she treated the actual staff. At least she ignored the staff. With me, she performed. On the 3rd day, she walked into the laundry room while I was hand-washing her delicates. My mother had forbidden me from using the machine for Jessica's underwear, claiming the silk was too expensive to risk. So there I was, arms deep in soapy water, scrubbing my sister's lace panties. Jessica leaned against the dryer, watching me. She was eating an apple. "You missed a spot," she said, pointing to a bra I had just finished. "That is la perla mia. It costs more than your car. Be careful with it." I did not look up. I just scrubbed harder. So she said, taking a bite of the apple, "Mom says you are homeless now." That is tragic, but I guess it makes sense. You were always the domestic type. You're good with your hands. I am a software engineer, I muttered under my breath. She laughed. It was a loud, barking laugh. "You are a washerwoman, Mia. Look at you. You are 30 years old, and you are washing my underwear in our parents' basement. Face it. You tried to be smart. You tried to be independent, and you failed." She finished her apple and tossed the core into the sink, right into the clean water with the silk. "Oops," she said. "Wash that again, would you?" I stood there trembling, staring at the apple core, floating among the bubbles. I wanted to grab her. I wanted to shake her, but I closed my eyes and counted to 10. I thought about the algorithm. I thought about Arthur Dawson. I thought about the $45 million. I picked out the apple core and threw it in the trash. I drained the water and started over. The breaking point happened 2 days before the party. Jessica had a dog, a purebred French bulldog named Coco. Coco was a fashion accessory, not a pet. She wore a diamond collar and ate organic salmon. I was in the garage, trying to fix a bug in the code on my phone during my 15-minute lunch break when Jessica burst in. "Coco made a mess in the garden," she announced. "Go clean it up." I looked at her. "I am eating lunch, Jessica. Can't you do it? It is your dog." She looked at me with pure incredulity. "Excuse me, I am wearing white linen pants. I'm not picking up dog poop. That is your job. You're staying here for free, remember? You do what I say." I put down my sandwich. I walked out to the garden. The garden was beautiful, manicured hedges, blooming roses, a stone fountain. And right in the middle of the path was a massive pile of dog waste. I went to the shed to get the shovel. When I came back, Jessica was standing on the balcony above me. She was not alone. Preston, her fiancé, was with her. He was tall with slicked back hair and a suit that cost $5,000. He was holding a glass of scotch. They were watching me. "Look at her," Jessica said loudly, her voice carrying over the garden. "It is actually kind of sad, isn't it? She had so much potential when we were kids. Or at least she thought she did. Now look at her." Preston left. It was a low, sneering sound. "Well, some people are born to lead babe, and some people are born to clean up the mess. It is just biology." I froze. I was standing there holding a shovel filled with dog feces while my sister and her future husband analyzed my social standing from a balcony. Jessica leaned over the railing. "Hey, Mia, make sure you get it all. We are having cocktails out there later, and I do not want to smell anything unpleasant." I looked up at them. The sun was behind them, creating a halo effect that made them look like golden gods looking down on a peasant. "You know," she called out, taking a sip of her drink, "this is the natural order of things. I am up here. You are down there. It is just where we belong. You were born to serve me, Mia. The sooner you accept that, the happier you will be." Something inside me shifted. It was the final click of a lock falling into place. For years I had hurt when they said these things. I had felt shame. I had felt inadequate. But in that moment, looking at her smug face and his arrogant grin, I felt nothing but cold, hard determination. They were right. This was the natural order. But nature is violent, and nature changes. I looked at the shovel. I looked at the garden. I looked at them. "I will get it all. I will get it all." I called back my voice, steady and loud. "Do not worry, Jessica. I will clean up everything." I was not talking about the dog poop. I finished the job. I washed my hands. I went back to the garage. I sat on my cot and I pulled out my phone. I had missed a call while I was in the garden. It was a San Francisco number. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dialed the voicemail. "This is Arthur Dawson," the voice said. "I have been looking over the architecture you described. Mia, if this code actually works, we are not talking about a seed round. We are talking about an acquisition. Can you come to my office on Monday? I want to introduce you to the board." I sat in the dark garage, smelling of gasoline and dog waste, and I smiled. Monday was the day after the engagement party. I would be the maid at their party. I would serve their champagne. I would take their insults. I would let them think they had won. I would let them think I was broken. Because On Monday, I was going to walk into a room of billionaires and sell the very brain they called useless for a fortune. They could not comprehend. Jessica thought I was born to serve her. She was wrong. I was born to buy her out. I lay back on the cot and closed my eyes. The humiliation burned my skin, but the fire inside me was hotter. Let them laugh for one more day. Just one more day. And then the world would turn upside down. The smell of lemon bleach and sewage is a sensory memory I will never be able to scrub from my mind. It was Sunday afternoon. The house was quiet because my parents and Jessica were out at a country club brunch, leaving me behind to deep clean the bathrooms before the guests arrived the next day. I was on my knees in the master bathroom, my hands raw and red inside yellow rubber gloves, scrubbing the porcelain of a toilet bowl that cost more than my college tuition. My back was aching. My knees were bruised. I was scrubbing away the filth of the people who treated me like filth. My phone was in my back pocket. I had set it to vibrate only because if my mother heard it ring, she would accuse me of slacking off. It buzzed against my hip. I ignored it. I kept scrubbing. It buzzed again and again, a persistent rhythmic vibration that demanded attention. I sat back on my heels, peeling off one wet glove and fishing the phone out with trembling fingers. I expected it to be a bill collector or maybe a spam call. I unlocked the screen. My heart stopped. The email notification was sitting right there on the lock screen. The sender was Arthur Dawson. The subject line was simply Nexus Demo. I forgot about the toilet. I forgot about the bleach burning my nose. I tapped the notification and read the preview. Dear Mia, I have discussed your algorithm with my partners. To be frank, they are skeptical that a single developer could achieve these efficiency numbers. However, I have convinced them to give you a chance to prove us wrong. We have an opening tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at our downtown headquarters. Bring your source code, bring your demo, and Mia, do not be late. This is your one shot. I dropped the phone on the bath mat. I stared at my reflection in the gilded mirror above the sink. I saw a woman with messy hair, dark circles under her eyes, and a stained t-shirt that said Emerald Motel Staff. I looked like a servant. I looked like exactly what my family said I was. But inside my chest, my heart was beating a war drum. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, panic set in immediately. I had the code. I had the knowledge, but I did not have the armor. In the corporate world, especially in a room full of venture capitalists, clothes are weapon. You cannot walk into a boardroom asking for millions of dollars looking like you just crawled out of a garage. I needed a suit. I needed to look like a CEO, but I had $0. My only blazer had been lost in the eviction. I finished cleaning the toilet in a daze. My mind was racing. I could not ask my parents. They would laugh in my face, or worse, they would sabotage me. I could not go to a store. Then I remembered. Jessica. My sister had a habit of buying expensive clothes, wearing them once for an Instagram photo, and then discarding them because they were out of season. She had a pile of donations in the back of her walk-in closet bags of designer clothes destined for the thrift store or the trash. I waited until I heard their cars pull into the driveway later that evening. I waited until they were downstairs watching television, drinking wine, and laughing. I crept upstairs to Jessica's room. It smelled of expensive vanilla perfume. I opened her closet door. It was like walking into a boutique, rows of silk, cashmere, and wool. I went straight to the back where the black garbage bags were piled up. I dug through them frantically. My hands touched silk blouses with wine stains, cashmere sweaters with tiny holes, and then I found it. A gray pantsuit. It was an Armani. I recognized the label. It was beautiful, structured, and professional. I held it up. It was a size too big for me. Jessica was taller and had a fuller figure, but the fabric was high quality. It had been discarded because of a small ink stain on the cuff of the sleeve. I hugged the suit to my chest. This was it. This was my armor. I snuck back down to the garage, my heart pounding in my throat. I had a small sewing kit in my backpack, a relic from my days of mending my own uniforms. I set up a workspace on the hood of my car using the flashlight from my phone. For the next 6 hours, I did not sleep. I became a tailor. I turned the suit inside out. I pinned the waist. I hemmed the pants. I rolled the sleeves up to hide the ink stain and stitched them in place, creating a modern 3/4 length look. My fingers were pricked and bleeding. My eyes were burning. but I stitched every seam with a prayer. With every pull of the needle, I was stitching my dignity back together. I was transforming a cast-off into a power suit. By 3 in the morning, it was done. It wasn't perfect, but it was sharp. It looked expensive. It looked like success. I hung it on a nail in the garage wall, covering it with a trash bag to protect it from the dust. I laid down on my cot and stared at the ceiling. I visualized the meeting. I visualized Arthur Dawson shaking my hand. I visualized the check. Monday morning arrived with grey skies and rain. I woke up at 5. I took a cold shower in the garage bathroom. I did my hair in a tight, sleek bun. I put on the suit. I looked in the mirror of the car. For the first time in years, I did not see the black sheep. I saw Mia Miller, founder of Nexus. The suit fit surprisingly well. The grey wool hugged my shoulders, making me look broader, stronger. I felt powerful. I checked my laptop bag, ensuring the backup drive was secure. I was ready to leave. I reached for the door handle of the garage. The door opened before I could touch it. Jessica stood there. She was wearing a silk robe holding a steaming cup of coffee. She looked me up and down. Her eyes widened. She blinked. Then a slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "Going somewhere?" she asked. I gripped my bag tighter. "I have a meeting," I said, keeping my voice steady. "A job interview." She took a sip of coffee. Her eyes stayed glued to my clothes. "That is a nice suit. It looks familiar. In fact, it looks exactly like the Armani set I told the maid to throw out last month. It was in the trash bag," I said. "You were throwing it away. I fixed it." She stepped into the garage. She circled me like a shark circling a swimmer. "You are wearing my clothes, my discarded trash." God, Mia, you really have no pride, do you? First, you live in my garage, then you clean my toilet, and now you're scavenging through my garbage like a raccoon. "I need to go, Jessica," I said, trying to step past her. "I am going to be late." She blocked my path. Her face hardened. "Take it off." "What?" I said, "Take it off," she snapped. "It is my suit. I paid for it. My money, my brand. I do not want you walking around Seattle wearing my clothes, pretending to be someone you are not. You're a maid, Mia. Maids do not wear Armani." "Jessica, please," I pleaded. My voice cracked. "This is important. I have a meeting with a venture capital firm. If I get this, it changes everything. I will buy you 10 new suits. Just let me wear this for 2 hours." She laughed. A cold, mirthless sound. "Venture capital. You. That is the funniest joke I have heard all year. You're going to embarrass yourself, and if you wear that, you are going to embarrass me. People know that suit. If they see the failure of the family wearing it, they will associate you with me. And I cannot have that." She reached out. Her hand moved faster than I expected. She grabbed the lapel of the jacket. "Let go," I shouted, pulling back. "No, you let go," she screamed. She yanked hard. I heard the sound before I felt it. The sound of fabric tearing. The sound of my hard work, my hope, and my dignity ripping apart. She did not just rip a button. She ripped the entire sleeve. The wool gave way at the shoulder seam where I had hand-stitched it the night before. The entire right side of the jacket hung open, exposing my bra strap and my pale skin. I stumbled back, gasping. I looked down at the ruined suit. The sleeve was dangling by a few threads. Jessica stood there, holding the piece of grey fabric she had torn off. She looked triumphant. She looked satisfied. "Oops," she said, tossing the fabric onto the dirty garage floor. "Looks like it was cheap quality anyway. Now you definitely cannot wear it." I stood there, shaking. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I wanted to tackle her. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. I wanted to hurt her the way she had just hurt me. But I looked at the time on my phone. 8:15. If I stayed and fought her, I would be late. If I cried, I would ruin my makeup. If I gave up, they won. I looked at Jessica. I looked at the smug satisfaction on her face. She expected me to collapse. She expected me to cancel the meeting and go back to scrubbing her floors. I slowly took off the ruined jacket. I let it drop to the floor next to the oil stains. I unzipped the tailored pants and stepped out of them, leaving them in a pile. I stood there in my underwear in the freezing garage. I walked over to my backpack. I pulled out my only other clean clothes, a pair of faded blue jeans and a plain black t-shirt. The uniform of a nobody. The uniform of a girl who had nothing. I put them on. I tied my sneakers. Jessica watched me, her brow furrowed in confusion. "You are not actually going, are you? You look like a homeless person." They are going to laugh you out of the building. I picked up my laptop bag. I walked up to her. I stood inches from her face. Let them laugh, I said, my voice low and dangerous. At least what I am wearing is mine. I pushed past her. I got into my rusted Corolla. I backed out of the garage, leaving my sister and the ruined Armani suit behind. I drove to downtown Seattle with tears streaming down my face. I wiped them away angrily. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. I looked like a college student. I looked poor. I looked desperate. Good. Let them see the desperation. Let them see the hunger. I was not going in there as a polished fake. I was going in there as a raw reality. I was going to walk into a room of billionaires in a t-shirt, and I was going to make them look at the code, not the clothes. Jessica thought she had stripped me of my armor. She was wrong. She had just stripped away the disguise. Now there was nothing left to hide. I was going to war, and I was bringing the only weapon that mattered. My mind. The elevator ride to the 40th floor of the Horizon Ventures building took less than 30 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. I stood in the corner of the mirrored box, clutching my battered laptop bag to my chest. My reflection stared back at me. A girl in a faded black t-shirt and jeans standing next to men in Italian suits who smelled of sandalwood and money. They looked at me with open curiosity, mixed with a hint of disdain. I could hear their thoughts as clearly as if they had spoken them aloud. Is she a messenger? Is she delivering lunch? Surely she's not going to the boardroom. When the door slid open, I stepped into a lobby that was larger than the entire ground floor of my parents' house. The walls were glass, revealing a panoramic view of Seattle under the gray morning rain. The floor was white marble, so polished it looked like water. I walked to the reception desk. The woman behind it was beautiful and terrifyingly groomed. She looked up at me, her eyes flickering to my sneakers and then to my face. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting that I was definitely in the wrong place. "I am here to see Arthur Dawson," I said. My voice was steady, but my knees were shaking. "I have a 9 o'clock meeting. My name is Mia Miller." She typed something into her computer, her eyebrows raising slightly. She picked up the phone. "Mr. Dawson, Miss Miller is here." "Yes, I will send her back." She put the phone down and pointed to a set of double mahogany doors. "They are waiting for you." I walked toward the doors. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was it. On the other side of those doors was either my salvation or my destruction. I thought about Jessica laughing in the garage. I thought about my father throwing the $50 bill on the floor. I took a deep breath, pushed the doors open, and stepped inside. The boardroom was enormous. A long oval table made of dark wood dominated the space. Seated around it were 12 people, 10 men and 2 women. They all stopped talking as I entered. Arthur Dawson sat at the head of the table. He stood up immediately, a warm smile breaking the tension. "Mia," he said, extending a hand. "You made it. Welcome." He did not look at my clothes, but everyone else did. I saw the exchanged glances. I saw a man in a blue tie lean over and whisper something to his neighbor. I saw the skepticism settle over the room like a heavy fog. They saw a girl who looked like she belonged in a college library, not a high-stakes investment meeting. I shook Mr. Dawson's hand. "Thank you for seeing me," I said. "Please take a seat." He gestured to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. "Hook up your machine. The floor is yours." I sat down. I pulled out my laptop. It was not the sleek MacBook everyone else had. It was a bulky gaming rig I had rented from the internet cafe, heavily modified. I plugged in the HDMI cable. The screen at the front of the room flickered to life. I stood up. I did not hide behind the podium. I walked to the front of the room. I looked at the 12 skeptical faces. "I know what you are thinking," I began. My voice was clear and projected to the back of the room. "You are looking at my jeans. You are looking at my age. And you are wondering why Arthur brought you here to listen to a night receptionist from a motel." The man in the blue tie chuckled nervously. "I am not here to talk about motels," I continued. "I am here to talk about the $300 billion the global logistics industry loses every year due to inefficient routing and predictive failure." I hit a key on my laptop. The screen filled with the Nexus interface. It was a complex living map of the global supply chain. Ships, planes, trucks, and trains moving in real time. "This is Nexus," I said. "It is not just a tracking system. It is a predictive engine. Most systems react to problems. A storm hits a port, they reroute. A strike happens, they delay. Nexus anticipates. I started the simulation. I fed it a scenario, a hypothetical hurricane hitting the Gulf Coast combined with a labor strike in Rotterdam. Watch. I said, pointing to the screen. The room went silent. They watched as the system reconfigured thousands of shipping routes instantly. It did not just move ships. It adjusted warehouse staffing levels in anticipated arrival ports. It renegotiated trucking contracts in real time based on predicted fuel prices. It balanced the load across the entire global network in milliseconds. The man in the blue tie leaned forward, his mouth opened slightly. "Is that live data?" he asked. "It is a simulation based on live feeds," I answered. "And here is the efficiency variance." I pulled up the numbers. Nexus had saved 14% in fuel costs and reduced delivery delays by 40% compared to current industry standards. For the next hour, I was not Mia the black sheep. I was not Mia the failure. I was a conductor, and the data was my orchestra. I answered every question they threw at me. They asked about scalability. I showed them the cloud architecture. They asked about security. I showed them the encryption protocols I had written myself during sleepless nights in the garage. They tried to trip me up on edge cases, and I solved them on the whiteboard before they even finished the sentence. I saw the shift in the room. It was palpable. The skepticism evaporated, replaced by a hungry intensity. These were sharks, and they had just smelled blood in the water. But it wasn't my blood. It was the blood of the old industry I was about to kill. When I finished, I closed my laptop. The room was dead silent. Arthur Dawson stood up. He looked around the table. "Well," he said, "I think that speaks for itself." The woman to his right spoke up. She had sharp, intelligent eyes. She was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my parents' house. Her nameplate read, "Eleanor Sterling, General Counsel." "Miss Miller," she said, "in my 20 years in this business, I have never seen a solo founder present a backend this robust. It is frankly terrifying that you built this alone." "Thank you," I said. "We are not going to offer you a seed round," she said flatly. My stomach dropped. Had I failed? Was it too good to be true? "We are not interested in investing a few million for a minority stake," she continued. "This technology is too dangerous to leave in the hands of a startup. If a competitor gets hold of this, or if you scale too slowly, we lose the advantage." She looked at Arthur. He nodded. Arthur turned to me. "Mia, we want to acquire Nexus. We want to buy the technology outright. We will keep you on as the chief technology officer with a 5-year contract so you can oversee the integration. But we want to own the IP. I held my breath. "What is the offer?" Arthur leaned forward. $45 million. The air left my lungs. 45 million. The number echoed in my head. It was an abstract concept. It was more money than my father had made in his entire life. It was freedom. It was power. It was a nuclear bomb I could drop on the people who had treated me like garbage. Cash. Arthur added, "Paid upon closing, plus 5% equity in the new subsidiary we will form." I tried to keep my face neutral, but my hands were trembling. I gripped the edge of the table. 45 million, I repeated. "Yes," Arthur said, "but there is a condition." I looked at him. Miss Sterling, the lawyer, opened a file in front of her. "When we do a deal of this magnitude, due diligence is critical. We need to know about your liabilities. Specifically, we need to know about your family." My heart skipped a beat. "My family?" "We ran a background check," she said. "Your father is Richard Miller. He is a known real estate developer. He has a reputation for being litigious. And your sister Jessica just filed for bankruptcy on her last business venture." She looked at me over her glasses. "If we give you $45 million, are they going to come out of the woodwork? Do they have any claim to this technology? Did you use their equipment to write it? Did they fund you in any way? We do not want to buy a lawsuit, Miss Miller. If your father thinks he owns a piece of this because you lived under his roof, we will walk away. We cannot deal with family drama." I stood there in the silence. I thought about the garage. I thought about the years of being called a leech. I thought about the debt they forced me to sign. And then I remembered, 3 years ago, the car accident, the police station, my father screaming, my mother crying about their reputation. They had been so afraid that the victims of the crash would sue me and come after their assets. They had been so terrified that my stupidity would cost them their fortune. So they had hired a lawyer to draft a document that legally severed me from them. A smile spread across my face. It started small and then it grew until I felt like laughing out loud. Miss Sterling, I said, my voice ringing with absolute confidence. You do not have to worry about my family. Why not? She asked. Because I said, reaching into my memory of that painful night. 3 years ago, my parents made me sign a document. It is an asset liability release. It states clearly that I'm solely responsible for my own debts and that they have no claim to my assets and I have no claim to theirs. They wanted to protect themselves from my poverty. I looked Arthur Dawson in the eye. In doing so, I said, they inadvertently protected me from their greed. I have the document scanned in my cloud drive. I can forward it to you right now. Arthur threw his head back and laughed. It was a loud, booming sound of genuine delight. That is perfect, he said. That is absolutely perfect. Sterling closed her file and smiled. Well then, Miss Miller, if that document holds up, we have a deal. I looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there in a mansion by the lake, my family was preparing for a party. They were getting ready to humiliate me one last time. They thought I was their servant. They thought I was their scapegoat. They had no idea that the dumb one had just become the most powerful person in their world. I turned back to the board. Draw up the papers, I said. I am ready to sign. To understand the magnitude of what happened next in that boardroom, you have to understand the depth of my parents' greed. You have to go back to the darkest winter of my life 3 years ago. It was the week after the accident. The week after I had agreed to take the fall for Jessica. I was sitting in my parents' library, a room filled with leather-bound books that nobody ever read. The air smelled of furniture polish and expensive cigars. My father was sitting behind his massive oak desk. My mother was pacing by the window, nervously twisting her diamond wedding ring. And sitting across from me was their family attorney, a man named Mr. Henderson, who had a smile that never reached his eyes. I was 26 years old, terrified and drowning in the guilt of a crime I did not commit. I thought we were there to discuss how to pay for the damaged car. I thought we were there to make a payment plan. But my parents had a different agenda. They were not worried about me. They were worried about exposure. My father slid a thick document across the desk toward me. It landed with a heavy thud. What is this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It is a safety measure, my father said, cold and detached. You see, Mia, you have shown us that you are a liability. You are reckless. You are irresponsible. And now you are in significant debt. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. We have worked too hard to build this family's fortune to let your mistakes drag us down. If the insurance company decides to sue you for the full amount, or if the owners of the other car decide to go after personal assets, we cannot have them looking at our bank accounts just because you share our last name. We need to insulate ourselves. I looked at the document. The title was in bold capital letters. Asset and Liability Separation Agreement and Total Release of Claims. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and opened a gold pen. Allow me to explain, Miss Miller. This document legally emancipates you from your parents in a financial sense. It states that you are the sole bearer of all your current and future debts. It protects your parents from any creditors that might come after you. I nodded slowly. I understood that part. They wanted to make sure they didn't have to pay for the car. I was ready to sign that. I was ready to take the burden, but then my mother spoke up. Her voice was sharp. It is not just about the debt, Henderson. Make sure she understands the rest of it. We do not want her coming back in 5 years asking for a handout. We do not want her claiming she's entitled to a trust fund or an inheritance. If we are cutting ties, we are cutting them completely. Mr. Henderson flipped to page 4, Clause 7b. He pointed to a dense paragraph of text. This is the mutual release clause, he explained. By signing this, your parents agree they have no claim to your labor or service. However, it also states that you waive all rights to any family support, inheritance, or financial assistance. And here is the important part. He tapped the paper with his pen. It states that any and all assets, intellectual property, real estate, or capital acquired by Mia Miller from this date forward shall be the sole and exclusive property of Mia Miller. The family entities of Richard and Linda Miller permanently waive any right, claim, or interest in said future assets regardless of their origin. I looked at my parents. They were looking at me with a mixture of fear and disgust. They were terrified that I would fail. They were terrified that I would end up homeless and come knocking on their door. They wanted to make sure that legally they could slam that door in my face without consequence. "You want to disown me?" I asked, the tears stinging my eyes. "We are protecting ourselves," my father said. "You are a sinking ship, Mia. We are just cutting the rope so you do not pull us down with you. Sign it." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I felt a profound sense of abandonment. My own parents were betting against me. They were so sure I would never amount to anything that they were willing to sign a legal document promising never to touch my money because they were convinced I would never have any. I signed my name, Mia Miller. The ink was black and permanent. My father snatched the paper away as soon as I finished. He checked the signature, then handed it to the lawyer. "File that immediately," he ordered, "and make sure the county clerk records it. I want a fortress between my money and her stupidity." I walked out of that library feeling like an orphan. I thought I had lost everything. Back in the present day, the boardroom was silent. I typed a few commands into my laptop and pulled up the scanned copy of that document from my secure cloud drive. I projected it onto the screen. The date stamped on the top was exactly 3 years ago. Miss Sterling, the general counsel, leaned forward. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon. She read the first page. She read the second page. And then she got to Clause 7B. The room was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Miss Sterling's eyes stopped moving. She reread the paragraph. Then she read it a third time. Slowly, a smile began to spread across her face. It was not the polite smile of a corporate lawyer. It was the genuine, delighted smile of a predator who just realized the prey has walked into a trap. She started to chuckle. It started as a low laugh in her throat, and then it grew louder. She took off her glasses and looked at Arthur Dawson. "Arthur," she said, "this is not just a release form. This is a masterpiece." She turned to me, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Miss Miller, do you realize what your parents did here?" I smiled back. "I think so, but I would love to hear you say it." "They were so afraid of your debt," she explained, tapping the screen, "that they drafted the most aggressive separation clause I have ever seen. Usually these agreements are one-sided, protecting the parents. But in their arrogance, they insisted on a bilateral waiver to ensure you could never sue them for support." She pointed to the line about future assets. "Right here," she said. "They explicitly waived all rights to any intellectual property or capital you acquire. They legally defined your brain and your work as sole and exclusive property to avoid liability. In doing so, they have stripped themselves of any legal standing to claim a penny of this deal." Arthur Dawson looked at the screen, and then he started to laugh too. "So if we pay her $45 million, he asked, "her father cannot touch it. He cannot even look at it." Miss Sterling laughed. "If he tries to sue claiming he supported her or that she lived in his house, this document shuts him down instantly. He signed a statement saying he has no financial relationship with her. He built a wall to keep her debt out, but now that wall is keeping her fortune in." The irony rippled through the room. The investors were grinning. They loved it. They loved the idea that the arrogant real estate developer had outsmarted himself. "This is a golden shield," Miss Sterling said, closing the file. "It is ironclad. Miss Miller, your parents handed you the greatest gift they could have possibly given you. They emancipated you right before you became a multi-millionaire." I looked at the document on the screen one last time. I remembered my father's face when he made me sign it. The look of disdain. The look of relief that he was finally free of me. He had wanted to make sure I was responsible for my own life. Well, he got his wish. "I am responsible for it," I said to the room. "All $45 million of it." Arthur stood up and extended his hand again. This time the handshake felt different. It was not just a welcome, it was a partnership. "Mia," he said, "let us get this contract signed. I have a feeling your parents are going to have a very bad day when they find out about this." I shook his hand. The deal was done. The money was mine, and the trap my family had set for me 3 years ago had just snapped shut on their own fingers. We spent the next 2 hours finalizing the details. The wire transfer was scheduled. The equity papers were drawn up. By the time I walked out of that building, the rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds over Seattle. I checked my phone. I had 12 missed calls from my mother. A text message from Jessica popped up on the screen. "Where are you? The caterers are asking for help setting up the champagne tower. Get back here now or you are sleeping on the street tonight. I looked at the message. I looked at the skyscraper behind me. I looked at the bank alert on my phone telling me the deposit was pending. I am not coming back to clean the tower, Jessica, I whispered to the screen. I am coming back to buy the building. I hailed a taxi. I did not drive my rusted Corolla. I left it in the parking garage. I would send a tow truck for it later. Today, I was riding in the back seat. I gave the driver the address of the estate. Are you going to a party? Miss the driver asked, seeing the address. Something like that, I said. I am going to a reveal. As the car wound its way toward the lake, I felt a calm settle over me. It was the calm of the hurricane's eye. My family was waiting for their servant. They were waiting for their scapegoat to come home and scrub the floors. But the girl returning to them was not the girl who left. The girl returning to them was armed with $45 million and a piece of paper that proved they didn't own a single inch of her soul. The game was over. They just didn't know it yet. The taxi dropped me off at the bottom of the long, winding driveway because I did not want them to see the headlights. It was nearly midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and cold, smelling of wet pine and damp earth. I walked up the asphalt path toward the house that loomed against the dark sky like a fortress. In my pocket, my phone felt heavy with the weight of the digital contract I had just signed. $45 million was pending in the cloud, waiting to rain down on my life. But right now, I was still Mia the servant, Mia the scapegoat. I had one final role to play before the curtain fell. I needed to retrieve my hard drive and the few personal items I had left in the garage. I intended to grab them and disappear into the night, checking into a 5-star hotel downtown until the party the next day. I crept around the side of the house, trying to be as silent as a shadow. The lights in the main library were still on, casting long yellow rectangles onto the wet lawn. As I passed the window, I heard a sound that made me freeze. It was a sound I had not heard in years. Jessica was crying, not her usual fake tears she used to get a new car or a vacation. This was the guttural sobbing of someone who was truly terrified. I pressed my back against the cold stone wall and edged closer to the slightly open window. I knew I should just leave. I knew I had won. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I needed to know what could possibly break the golden child. I listened. "Daddy, you have to fix this," Jessica wailed. "They said they are going to come to the party tomorrow. They said they will cause a scene if I do not have the interest payment." My father's voice was low and shaking with rage. $2 million, Jessica. $2 million. How could you be so stupid? You told me the fashion line was breaking even. You did not tell me you were leveraging the inventory to speculate on cryptocurrency. I almost laughed out loud. Crypto? Of course. Jessica always chased the easiest money. "It was supposed to go up," she sobbed. "My friends said it was a sure thing. I borrowed from those private lenders because the bank would not approve me fast enough. Now the coin crashed, and they want their money. They are talking about seizing assets, Dad. They know about the house." There was the sound of glass shattering. My father had thrown something. "We cannot touch the house," he hissed. "The estate is in a trust to protect it from taxes. If I pull $2 million out now, the IRS will audit us back to the Stone Age. We are illiquid, Jessica. All my cash is tied up in the new development downtown. I do not have $2 million lying around to clean up your mess. Then what do I do?" she screamed. "They are going to ruin me. Preston will leave me." Silence fell over the room. I held my breath. I could hear the gears turning in my father's head. He was a survivor. He would throw anyone under the bus to save his own skin. I waited to see who the victim would be this time. "There is a way," my father said slowly. His voice had changed. It had lost the anger and gained a cold, predatory calm. "What way?" Jessica asked, sniffing. "The lenders do not care where the money comes from," he said. "They just need collateral. We need to secure a high-risk bridge loan to pay them off, but we cannot put it in our names. My credit is leveraged and yours is shot. We need a third party, someone with a clean record but no assets to lose, someone who is pliable. Number one." I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew exactly where this was going. "Mia," my mother's voice chimed in. She had been silent until now. "We can use Mia, but she has no money," Jessica said. "She does not need more money," my father explained. "She just needs a signature. I can draft a deed of trust using the garage as a separate dwelling unit. I will tell the bank we are gifting it to her. Then we have her sign a loan against it. We get the cash pay of your sharks and put the debt in Mia's name. But she will default, Jessica said. She cannot make the payments. Exactly, my father said. When she defaults, the bank forecloses on the garage. We buy it back at auction for pennies on the dollar. But the debt, the 2 million plus interest, that stays with her. It will bankrupt her. She will be on the hook for years. But who cares? She is already at rock bottom. Ruining her credit score does not matter because she does not have a future anyway. We are saving her the trouble of failing on her own. I stood there in the dark, my hands clenched into fists, so tight my fingernails cut into my palms. It was not enough that they had treated me like a servant. It was not enough that they had stolen my childhood. Now they were planning to frame me for a $2 million debt to save Jessica from her own greed. They were willing to destroy my financial life forever just to keep up appearances. I felt a cold tear slide down my cheek. It was the last tear I would ever shed for them. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of mourning for the parents I never had. I wiped my face. I adjusted my jacket, and I walked to the back door. I entered the kitchen and made enough noise to announce my presence. I slammed the door. I dropped my keys. Mia, my mother, called out from the library. Her voice was sickly sweet. "Is that you, darling? Come in here for a moment." I walked into the library. The scene was almost comical. Jessica was hurriedly wiping her eyes, pretending to look at a magazine. My father was sitting behind his desk, a fresh document already printed in front of him. My mother was pouring tea. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my face blank. "I just came to grab my sleeping bag." "Sit down, Mia," my father said, gesturing to the chair. "You look tired." "I am," I said. "It has been a long day." "We have some good news," my father said, smiling. "A shark smiling at a seal. Your mother and I have been talking. We feel bad about you staying in the garage without any security. We want to do something for you." He slid the document across the desk. It was thick and dense with legal jargon. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a tenant agreement," he lied smoothly. "It just formalizes your stay here. It gives you legal residence so you can apply for state benefits if you need to. It also includes a small insurance policy we are taking out for you. Just standard paperwork to protect you while you live on the property." I looked down at the paper. I saw the words indemnity and guarantor hidden in the fine print. It was exactly what I thought it was. A death warrant for my freedom. "Sign it now, darling," my mother urged, offering me a pen. "Then you can go sleep. We want you rested for the party tomorrow." I reached out and took the pen. My father's eyes lit up with greed. Jessica leaned forward, holding her breath. They thought they had me. They thought I was the same stupid, desperate girl who had signed the car accident waiver 3 years ago. I held the pen over the paper. Then I dropped it. "Oops," I said. I rubbed my eyes. "I am sorry, Dad. My eyes are so blurry. I think I need new glasses." The words are swimming on the page. "Just sign at the X," my father said, his patience thinning. "You do not need to read it. It is just standard forms." "I cannot," I said, standing up. I promised myself I would never sign anything I could not read. Not after the last time. I yawned a big fake yawn. "I am going to go to sleep. I will sign it first thing in the morning, before the caterers arrive. I promise." My father looked at the paper, then at me. He was calculating the risk. If he pushed too hard, I might get suspicious. If he waited, he risked nothing because where was I going to go? I was homeless. "Fine," he snapped. "First thing in the morning. 7 a.m. "Do not make me chase you, Mia." "I won't," I said. "Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams, Jessica." I walked out of the library. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. As soon as I was in the hallway, I broke into a silent run. I ran to the garage. I did not pack my clothes. I did not pack the sleeping bag. I grabbed my backpack with the hard drive. That was all that mattered. I looked at the cot where I had slept for the last week. I looked at the pile of Jessica's laundry, waiting to be folded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a marker. On the white sheet of the cot, I wrote 2 words. "Game over." I slipped out the side door of the garage into the darkness. I did not take my car. They would hear the engine. I walked down the long driveway hidden by the shadows of the pine trees. I walked past the gate. I walked for 2 miles until I reached the main road where I called another Uber. As I sat in the back of the car, watching the lights of my parents' estate fade into the distance, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I had been carrying since I was born. They were sleeping soundly, dreaming of how they would trap me tomorrow. They were dreaming of saving their reputation at the cost of my life. Let them sleep, let them dream, because when the sun rose tomorrow, they were going to wake up to a nightmare. I was not just escaping, I was arming myself. They wanted a signature. Well, tomorrow they would get one, but it would not be on a loan document. It would be on a check that would buy their entire world out from under them. I looked at my phone. The bank notification popped up. Deposit received $45 million. I smiled in the darkness. See you at the party, Dad. 7 days. That is exactly 168 hours. That is how long it took to transform my life from a tragedy into a weapon. I was no longer the girl sleeping on a canvas cot in a freezing garage, smelling of gasoline and dog waste. I was waking up in the presidential suite of the Four Seasons Hotel overlooking the Seattle skyline. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. The air smelled of fresh orchids and expensive coffee. And the bank balance on my phone screen still made my heart skip a beat every time I looked at it. $45 million. It was not just money. It was ammunition. For the last week, I had been busy. While my parents were frantic trying to figure out where I had gone, I was building my war council. I did not just buy clothes, I bought an identity. I hired a personal stylist named Chloe, who usually dressed A-list celebrities for red carpet events. When she walked into my suite with racks of designer gowns, I gave her a very specific instruction. I told her I did not want to look pretty. I did not want to look soft. I said I want to look like I own the building. I want to look like a threat. Chloe understood immediately. We went through dozens of dresses. Pastels were out. Florals were out. We settled on a gown that was pure drama. It was a deep blood-red silk custom fitted to every curve of my body. It was backless, with a plunging neckline that was daring but sophisticated. It moved like liquid fire when I walked. When I put it on and stepped into the 6-inch Christian Louboutin heels, I did not recognize the woman in the mirror. The hunched shoulders of the maid were gone. The tired eyes of the receptionist were gone. In their place stood a woman who looked like she could burn a city to the ground without ruining her manicure. But a dress was not enough. I needed muscle. I hired a private security firm, the best in the city. I requested 2 personal bodyguards. I got Stone and Miller. They were ex-military, massive men who wore black suits and earpieces and looked like they could stop a tank with their bare hands. I told them specifically that tonight their job was not just to protect me. It was to intimidate. I wanted my family to feel physically small when I walked into the room. And finally, I hired the most important part of my team, the executioners. I retained a top-tier legal team led by a man named Marcus. Marcus was a shark in a 3-piece suit. He had spent the last 3 days digging through every public record, every lien and every loan associated with my father and Jessica. He had found things even I did not know about. He had the foreclosure notices. He had the lawsuits from unpaid contractors. And most importantly, he had the original copy of the asset liability release I had signed 3 years ago. He had blown it up and mounted it on a presentation board. While I was sharpening my knives, my family was setting the stage for their own funeral. I had been watching their social media. It was pathetic and fascinating. They were throwing the engagement party of the century. My father had leveraged every last favor he had to invite the local press. There were rumors that a reporter from the Seattle Times would be there. They had hired a videographer to live stream the toasts. They wanted the world to see Jessica as the perfect successful heiress marrying the perfect successful lawyer. They were desperate for PR. My father needed to show his investors that the family was still strong and wealthy to keep them from pulling their money out of his failing developments. Jessica needed to show her creditors that she was marrying into money, so they would hold off on suing her for a few more weeks. The whole party was a lie. A glittery, expensive lie built on a foundation of debt and deceit. I checked my phone one last time. It was 6 in the evening. The party had started an hour ago. According to the live stream, Jessica was currently showing off her ring to a group of women who secretly hated her. My mother was bragging about the catering. My father was holding court by the bar, laughing too loudly. They had told everyone a story about me. I heard my mother on the live stream earlier. Someone asked where Mia was. My mother had sighed a tragic, dramatic sigh and said, "Oh, poor Mia. She's having a bit of a mental health crisis. We sent her to a wellness retreat in Arizona to get some rest. She just was not strong enough to handle the real world. They had erased me. They had rewritten my narrative to make me look weak and unstable so that if I ever did speak up, nobody would believe me. They thought I was gone. They thought I was crying in a gutter somewhere, terrified and penniless." I stood up from the vanity table. Chloe fixed a stray hair. Stone handed me my clutch. Marcus the lawyer nodded at me. "It is time," Marcus said. "The press is positioned by the stage. Your father is scheduled to give his speech in 45 minutes. That is our window." I walked to the elevator. My reflection in the brass doors showed a woman who was terrified 3 years ago, but was terrifying today. I was not going to that party to make a scene. I was going to that party to end an era. The limousine was waiting downstairs. As I slid into the leather seat and the driver pulled out into the rainy Seattle night, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was not revenge. Revenge is emotional. This was a correction. This was the universe balancing the scales. I looked out the window as we drove toward the lake. I watched the city lights blur. I thought about the little girl who used to hide in the library, reading books to escape the yelling. I thought about the teenager who was told she was stupid. I thought about the woman who scrubbed the toilets. "Goodbye, Mia," I whispered to the rain. The car turned onto the highway. We were 20 minutes away. I checked the live stream again. My father was raising a glass. "To family," he said on the screen. "To loyalty." I laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "To loyalty, Dad." I tapped the screen and turned it off. The Queen was coming home, and she was bringing the guillotine. The engagement party was a masterclass in deception, from the tinted window of the lead Rolls-Royce Phantom. I watched the scene unfold like a silent movie. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and clear. My parents had spared no expense. They had erected a massive white marquee on the great lawn and illuminated by thousands of fairy lights that twinkled like captured stars. A live jazz band was playing soft, inoffensive music. Waiters in white tuxedos drifted through the crowd with silver trays of caviar and champagne. It was beautiful. It was expensive, and every single inch of it was paid for with money they did not have. The car idled at the bottom of the hill, just out of sight. My driver, stoic man with a thick neck, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "We are holding for your signal, Miss Miller." I looked at the live feed on my tablet one last time. My father, Richard, was walking up the steps to the stage. He adjusted his silk tie. He looked every inch the benevolent patriarch. He tapped the microphone, and the feedback whined slightly, drawing the attention of the 300 guests. The crowd fell silent. They turned their faces toward him, eager to hear the wisdom of a successful man. "Thank you all for coming," my father began, his voice booming with practiced warmth. "Tonight we celebrate love. We celebrate the union of my wonderful daughter, Jessica, and her brilliant fiancé, Preston. But we also celebrate family. And family, as we all know, is about supporting one another. It is about lifting up the weak." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Here it comes, the narrative. He paused for dramatic effect, looking down at his shoes as if overcome with emotion. "You all know our family story. You know that while Jessica has soared, achieving incredible success in the fashion world, her sister Mia has struggled. We have tried to help her, we have tried to guide her, but some birds just refuse to fly." A murmur of sympathetic sighs rippled through the crowd. Poor Richard. Such a good father, burdened with the failure of a daughter. My father looked up, his eyes glistening with fake tears. "But we do not give up on family. Tonight I have a special announcement. Even though Mia is not here due to her personal struggles, Linda and I have decided to gift her the guest cottage on this estate. We are transferring the title to her name tomorrow." Applause broke out. People clapped for his generosity. However, he continued, raising a hand to quiet them. "With ownership comes responsibility. We are also transferring the financial obligations of that property to her. It is a heavy burden, yes, a debt of $2 million. But we believe it is time for Mia to learn the hard way what it means to be an adult. We are doing this for her own good, to teach her accountability." My blood ran cold. He was doing it. He was publicly announcing the trap. He was framing the bankruptcy he was about to force on me as a lesson in responsibility. He was getting the community to applaud him for ruining my life. I tapped the partition glass. "Go," I said. The driver nodded. He spoke into his radio. "Move in." The engine of the Phantom roared to life. Behind us, two massive black Cadillac Escalades turned on their headlights. The convoy surged forward. We did not drive up the service road. We did not drive up the driveway. We drove straight across the manicured lawn. My father was just raising his glass for a toast when the beams of our headlights cut through the party like searchlights. The jazz band stopped playing. The guests gasped and scrambled out of the way as three massive vehicles tore through the grass, leaving deep muddy tracks in the pristine turf. We stopped 10 feet from the stage. The engines idled with a low, menacing growl. The silence that followed was absolute. 300 people held their breath. My father stood frozen on stage, his glass of champagne halfway to his mouth. Jessica and Preston were standing next to him, their mouth open in shock. The doors of the Escalades opened first. Stone and Miller, my bodyguards, stepped out. They were giants. They wore black suits that strained against their muscles. They did not smile. They did not speak. They simply walked to the rear door of the Phantom and stood on either side of it, creating a human shield. Miller reached out and opened my door. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The receptionist uniform was gone. The cleaning gloves were gone. I stepped out. First the shoes. The red soles of my Louboutins hit the muddy grass. Then the dress. The blood-red silk poured out of the car like liquid danger. It hugged my waist and flowed to the ground, a stark, violent contrast to the white marquee and the polite pastels of the guests. I stood up to my full height. The diamonds around my neck caught the light of the chandeliers and threw it back with blinding intensity. I did not look at the guests. I looked straight at the stage. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It was a physical sound, a wave of shock. They did not recognize me at first. They saw a woman who looked like a movie star or a foreign dignitary. They saw power. Then my mother dropped her glass. It shattered on the wooden stage and the sound broke the spell. "Mia," she whispered. The microphone picked it up. I started walking. I did not rush. I walked with the slow, deliberate cadence of a predator who knows the prey has nowhere to run. My bodyguards flanked me, moving perfectly in sync. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I saw their faces as I passed. I saw the confusion. I saw the envy. I saw the realization dawning in their eyes. "Is that the maid?" someone whispered. "No, it cannot be. Look at that dress. That is a Galia Lahav." I walked right up to the base of the stage. I looked up at my father. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His face was pale, his hands shaking. The benevolent patriarch mask was slipping, revealing the terrified old man underneath. Jessica was the first to recover. Her shock turned instantly to fury. She marched to the edge of the stage, her face twisting into an ugly sneer. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "What is this?" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, cracking with hysteria. "What are you wearing? That is my party. You are ruining my party." I did not answer. I just looked at her calmly. "You stole it," she shrieked. She looked at the crowd, desperate to control the narrative. "She stole that dress. She stole those cars. She is a thief. I told you she was unstable. She has lost her mind." She turned to the security guards hired for the event, two older men in ill-fitting uniforms who looked completely out of their depth. "Arrest her!" Jessica yelled, stomping her foot like a toddler. "Grab her! She is trespassing! She's a thief! Take that dress off her!" The security guards hesitated. They looked at me. They looked at the massive bodyguard standing next to me. They looked at the sheer aura of wealth radiating from me. They did not move. "Do something," my father roared, finding his voice. He stepped forward, his face purple with rage. "Mia, get out of here! How dare you show your face after what you have done? You are embarrassing this family. Go back to the garage where you belong." I laughed. It was not a loud laugh. It was soft amusement. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a wireless microphone I had brought with me. I flipped the switch. "Hello, Dad," I said. My voice was amplified, clear and crisp, cutting through the night air. "I am afraid I cannot go back to the garage. You see, I outgrew it, just like I outgrew your lies. My father looked at the microphone in my hand, then at the sound engineer booth. He made a slashing motion across his throat, telling them to cut my sound. But the sound guy was staring at me mesmerized. He did not move. You wanted to talk about responsibility, I said, turning to face the crowd. You wanted to tell these good people about the debt you are gifting me. $2 million was it? To teach me a lesson. I walked up the stairs to the stage. My bodyguards followed close behind. Jessica tried to block me, but Stone simply stepped in front of her. He did not touch her. He just occupied the space so completely that she had to step back. I stood next to my father. The contrast was brutal. He looked sweaty and disheveled. I looked pristine and cold. You forgot to mention one thing, Dad, I said, speaking into the mic. You forgot to mention that the $2 million debt belongs to Jessica. You forgot to tell them that she gambled away her inventory money on cryptocurrency. And now you are trying to use my name to launder her failure because you are too broke to bail her out yourself. Liar! Jessica screamed, lunging at me. You represent nothing. You are a broke waitress. Preston grabbed her arm, holding her back. He was looking at me with a strange expression. He was a lawyer. He recognized the smell of money. He was looking at the cars. He was looking at the security. He was doing the math. I turned to Jessica. I am not a waitress anymore, sister, I said. And I am definitely not broke. I signaled to Marcus, my lawyer, who had stepped out of the second SUV. He walked up the stairs carrying a leather briefcase. He opened it and handed me a document. I held it up. You accused me of theft. I said, my voice hardening, but the only thieves here are standing on this stage. I looked at the crowd. My father just told you he is gifting me the cottage. What he did not tell you is that he planned to foreclose on it next week to buy it back for pennies, leaving me with the debt. It is a fraud. And I have the emails to prove it. My father lunged for the microphone. Give me that, he shouted. Miller stepped in. He put one large hand on my father's chest. My father bounced off him like a ball hitting a wall. Do not touch her, Miller said. His voice was low like growling thunder. The crowd gasped again. This was not a family spat. This was a coup. I turned back to my father. You wanted to give me a lesson in finance, Dad. So I learned one. I learned that in the real world, you cannot treat people like garbage and expect them to pay your bills. I reached into my clutch again. I pulled out a check, a single check. I held it up. I am here to make a counteroffer, I said. Jessica laughed nervously. What is that? A check for your rent? $50. No, I said. I looked at the check. Then I looked at the 300 guests. I am buying the estate, I announced. Silence. Absolute dead silence. What my father whispered. I am buying the house, I repeated. The land, the garage, the marquee we are standing under, and I am buying the debt. All of it. I handed the check to my father. He looked at it. His eyes bulged. His hands started to shake uncontrollably. He looked at the number. He looked at the bank logo. He looked at my signature. $45 million. The paper rattled in his hand, where he choked out. Where did you get this? I smiled. A smile that did not reach my eyes. A smile that said, checkmate. From the brain you said was slow, I answered. From the hands you said were only good for scrubbing toilets. I turned to the crowd. I am Mia Miller, founder and CEO of Nexus Logistics, and as of this morning, I am the new owner of this property. I looked at Jessica. She was pale white. She looked like she was going to faint, which means I continued. This is my party now, and you are trespassing. Get out. The silence that followed my declaration of ownership was heavy enough to crush a man, but my lawyer Marcus knew exactly how to break it. He stepped forward with the grace of a jungle cat moving in for the kill. He adjusted his silk tie and tapped the microphone I was holding. I handed it to him. He did not need to shout. His voice was a deep baritone that commanded the attention of every single person on that lawn, from the waiters in the back to the stunned socialites in the front row. My father was still standing there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled out of water. He was trying to process the words I had just spoken. Buying the estate, buying the debt, it was too much for his brain to comprehend. He needed a lifeline, and he looked to Marcus, hoping that perhaps this man in the expensive suit was a negotiator sent to bail him out. He was wrong. Marcus looked at my father with a cool professional detachment. Then he turned to the crowd. He held up a hand not to wave, but to command silence. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Marcus began. His voice echoed through the expensive speakers my father had rented to broadcast his own vanity. My name is Marcus Sterling. I am a senior partner at the law firm of Sterling and Holt. A ripple went through the crowd. Everyone knew Sterling and Holt. They were the firm you hired when you wanted to destroy a corporation or bury a scandal. They did not handle parking tickets, and they definitely did not handle family disputes. They were heavy artillery. I am here tonight, representing my client, Miss Mia Miller. Marcus continued gesturing to me with a deferential nod. You may know her as the daughter of this family. You may know her as the young woman who was just publicly humiliated on this stage. But the business world knows her by a different name. He paused. The timing was perfect. To the investment community, Marcus said, clearly enunciating every syllable. Miss Miller is known as the brilliant architect and sole founder of Nexus Logistics, a proprietary artificial intelligence platform that has just revolutionized the global supply chain. My father blinked. Nexus. The word meant nothing to him. He was a brick and mortar man. He did not understand code. He did not understand the future. This morning, Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. My client finalized a strategic acquisition deal with Horizon Ventures. The terms of this deal are confidential, but given the public nature of the accusations made against Miss Miller tonight, I feel it is necessary to correct the record regarding her financial standing. He looked directly at Jessica, who was still trembling in her fiancé's arms. Ms. Miller is not broke, Marcus said coldly. She is not a liability. As of 9 a.m. this morning, the Nexus technology was acquired for a lump sum cash payment. He let the words hang there. Lump sum. Cash. The valuation of this deal, Marcus announced, looking straight into the camera of the live stream, is $45 million. The reaction was instantaneous. It started as a gasp, a collective intake of breath from 300 people. Then it turned into a roar. 45 million. The number rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. People turned to each other, their eyes wide, whispering frantically. The waiters stopped serving. The band members stood up to get a better look. $45 million. It was more money than my father had ever seen. It was more than his entire real estate portfolio was worth, even before the market crashed. It was generational wealth. It was power. I watched my parents, and what I saw made my stomach turn. For a second, just a fleeting second, they looked ashamed. But then the shame evaporated. It was replaced by something far more dangerous. Greed. Pure, unadulterated hunger. I watched the transformation happen in real time. It was like watching a demon put on a human mask. My father stopped shaking. He stood up straighter. He smoothed down his jacket. The purple rage faded from his face, replaced by a bright, terrifyingly fake smile. His eyes, which had been filled with hatred only moments ago, now filled with tears. Fake, calculated tears. He looked at me, not as a daughter, but as a bank vault that had just swung open. He stepped toward me. He opened his arms wide. Mia, he choked out, his voice trembling with a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Oh my God! Mia. He ignored Marcus. He ignored the bodyguards. He focused entirely on me. My brilliant girl, he shouted so the crowd could hear. I knew it. I knew you had it in you. He turned to the audience, beaming like a proud patriarch. Did I not tell you? He boomed. Did I not say we were pushing her? This was the plan all along, everyone. We had to be hard on her. We had to push her to the brink so she would find her greatness. And look at what our tough love has created. The crowd was confused. They were looking back and forth between us. My father was rewriting history in front of their eyes, trying to spin his abuse into a strategy of success. He turned back to me, tears streaming down his face. He reached out to hug me. Come here, sweetheart, he said. Come to Daddy. I'm so proud of you. We are all so proud of you. I did not move. Miller, my bodyguard, stepped in front of me, blocking my father's path. My father bounced off Miller's chest, but he did not get angry this time. He just laughed, a jovial, forgiving laugh. It is okay, big guy, my father said to Miller, patting his arm. We are family. It is a family celebration. My mother, Linda, came running up the stairs. She had dried her tears instantly. She pushed past Jessica, who was still staring at me with open-mouthed shock. My mother grabbed my hand. Her palms were sweaty. Mia, darling, she gushed. 45 million. That is incredible. We have so much planning to do. You know, your father has the best financial advisors in the city. We need to move that money into the family trust immediately to protect it from taxes. She was already spending it. She had not even said congratulations. She was already figuring out how to get it into an account she could control. Yes, my father agreed, nodding enthusiastically. We need to set up a meeting first thing tomorrow. You are young Mia. You do not understand how to manage that kind of capital. It is dangerous. You need guidance. But do not worry. We are here for you. We will manage it all. We will take care of everything just like we always have. He looked at Jessica. Jessica, come give your sister a hug. Your sister just saved the family. Jessica blinked. The gears in her head were turning. She realized that my money was the only thing that could save her from the sharks. She swallowed her pride. She swallowed her jealousy. She forced a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. Yeah, she said, her voice high and tight. Wow, Mia, that is great. We can pay off the house. We can expand my fashion line. We can do so much. My father turned back to the crowd, raising his hands. Everyone, he shouted. The party is not over. In fact, it is just beginning. Tonight, we celebrate my daughter Mia, the genius of the Miller family. Champagne for everyone. On the house. He was disgusting. He was absolutely soulless. He truly believed that he could just sweep years of abuse under the rug because I had a check in my purse. He thought that saying, "We are family," was a magic spell that would make me forget the garage, the hunger, and the humiliation. He reached for the microphone again, trying to take it from Marcus. I will take it from here. Surely, he said, smiling at my lawyer. Thank you for bringing her home. We have a lot of family business to discuss. I started to laugh. It began as a low chuckle in my throat. Then it grew. I threw my head back and laughed. It was a loud, uninhibited sound that cut through my father's speech like a knife. The crowd went silent again. My father stopped talking. He looked at me, his smile faltering slightly. Mia, honey, he asked nervously, what is so funny? I stopped laughing. I wiped a tear from my eye. I looked at him. I looked at my mother. I looked at Jessica. You are, I said. You are funny, Dad. I stepped around Miller. I stood toe-to-toe with my father. I was wearing 6-inch heels, so I was looking down at him. You think you are going to manage my money? I asked, my voice soft and deadly. My father chuckled nervously. Well, manage is a strong word. We will guide you. We are a team, Mia. The Miller family stands together. What is yours is ours. That is how it works. I shook my head. No, Dad. That is not how it works. Not anymore. I turned to Marcus. The bag, please. Marcus opened his briefcase again. He pulled out the large presentation board we had prepared. It was covered in a black cloth. He set it up on an easel right in the center of the stage. My father frowned. What is this? I walked over to the easel. I placed my hand on the cloth. You said we are family, I said. You said that what is mine is ours. You said you want to protect me. Exactly, my father said, sensing a trap, but unable to stop himself. We love you, Mia. I ripped the black cloth away. Underneath was a blown-up, high-resolution image of a legal document. It was 3 feet tall. The text was crisp and clear. The title at the top was bold and unmistakable. Asset and Liability Separation Agreement and Total Release of Claims. The crowd leaned in. The camera zoomed in. My father's face went white. The color drained from him so fast he looked like a corpse standing upright. He recognized it instantly. I pointed to the date. November 14th, 2023. I read aloud. 3 years ago. Do you remember this day, Dad? He did not speak. He could not speak. I do. I continued walking around the easel. I remember it perfectly. I was sitting in your library crying because you told me I was a burden. I was terrified because you forced me to take the blame for Jessica's drunk driving. And you were terrified too, but not for me. You were terrified that my bad luck would touch your money. I pointed to his signature at the bottom of the page. You made me sign this, I said. You told me it was to teach me responsibility. You told the lawyer to make it ironclad. You wanted to make sure that if I failed, if I went into debt, if I ended up on the street, you would not owe me a single penny. I turned to the specific clause we had highlighted in yellow. Clause 7B. I read it out loud, my voice ringing across the lawn. The family entities of Richard and Linda Miller permanently waive any right claim or interest in any future assets acquired by Mia Miller. This waiver is absolute and irrevocable. I turned back to my father. You were so afraid I would fail that you legally cut yourself off from my success. You signed away your right to be my father because you thought I was worthless. I stepped closer to him. You wanted a wall between your money and my stupidity, Dad. Well, congratulations. You built it. But now, that wall is protecting my $45 million from your greed. My mother let out a strangled sob. She grabbed my father's arm. Richard, tell me that is not true. Tell me you did not sign that. My father pushed her away. He was staring at the document like it was a ghost. Mia, he whispered, his voice cracking. We did not mean it like that. It was just a formality. It was just paper. I laughed again. Just paper, I repeated. No, Dad. That is a contract, and unlike you, I read the fine print. I turned to the crowd. My father just tried to take credit for my success. He tried to tell you that he supported me. But this document proves that 3 years ago, he bet against me. He bet that I would be a failure. I looked at Jessica, and he bet on the wrong daughter. I motioned to Marcus. My lawyer has copies of this for the press, I said, along with the police report from the accident 3 years ago, proving who was really driving the car. Jessica screamed. No, you cannot do that. I can, I said. And I just did. I looked at my father one last time. You said the money needs to be managed by family. Well, Dad, I have some bad news. According to this piece of paper, I do not have a family. I turned my back on them. Get off my stage, I said, and get off my property. You have 1 hour to vacate the premises before I have my security team remove you for trespassing. The crowd erupted, but this time it wasn't polite applause. It was chaos. Cameras were flashing, people were shouting, and in the middle of it all, my father fell to his knees, not in prayer, but in total, absolute defeat. The projection screen that my lawyer Marcus had unveiled was now the brightest thing in the entire garden. It glowed with a harsh white light, illuminating the terrified faces of my parents like a spotlight in an interrogation room. The crowd of 300 guests pushed forward, craning their necks to read the fine print that was blown up to the size of a billboard. It was a scanned copy of a legal document. The paper was yellowed slightly in the image, but the black ink of the signatures was as sharp as a knife blade. Marcus stepped up to the easel, holding a laser pointer. A red dot appeared on the screen, dancing over the legal jargon until it settled on a specific paragraph near the bottom of page 4. The silence in the marquee was suffocating. Even the wind seemed to have died down to listen to the verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice calm and authoritative, amplifying through the speakers. What you are looking at is a document titled Asset and Liability Separation Agreement. It is dated November 14th, 2023. He paused, looking directly at my father, who was swaying slightly on his feet, his face the color of old ash. Mr. Miller, Marcus continued, do you recognize this document? You should. You paid my firm's competitor $5,000 to draft it. You insisted on the most aggressive language possible. You wanted to ensure that your daughter Mia here could never legally claim to be part of your financial household. My father did not answer. He was staring at the screen, his eyes locked on his own signature. He looked like a man watching a slow-motion car crash. Allow me to read Clause 4, Section B for the room, Marcus said. He cleared his throat. It reads as follows. To protect the assets of Party A, defined here as Richard and Linda Miller, from the liabilities of Party B, defined here as Mia Miller, both parties agree to a total and permanent severance of financial ties. Furthermore, Party A explicitly waives any and all rights claims or interests in any future assets, income, or intellectual property acquired by Party B. This waiver is absolute, irrevocable, and survives the death of either party. Marcus lowered the laser pointer and looked at the crowd. In plain English, Marcus explained, it means that 3 years ago, when Mia was working minimum wage jobs and struggling to pay for a car accident she did not cause, her parents were so terrified of her debt that they legally disowned her financial future. They signed a contract stating that no matter what Mia achieved, no matter how much money she made, they would never touch a single cent of it. He turned to my father with a smile that was all teeth. You wanted to build a wall to keep her poverty out, Mr. Miller, but you did not realize that one day that same wall would keep her $45 million in. You signed away your right to this fortune to save yourself the cost of a used car. The impact of those words hit my father like a physical blow. I watched it happen. I watched the realization travel from his brain to his body. The air seemed to leave his lungs in a rush. His knees, which had held him up through decades of boardroom battles and ruthless business deals, suddenly turned to water. He did not faint. It was worse than that. He crumbled. He sank to the lawn, his expensive tuxedo trousers staining with mud and wet grass. He looked small. He looked broken. He stared at the ground, his hands shaking violently. "No," he whispered. It was a sound of pure despair. We didn't know. We thought she was worthless. My mother Linda let out a high-pitched wail. She looked from my father on the ground to me standing on the stage in my red dress. The calculation in her eyes was gone, replaced by sheer animal panic. She realized the money was gone. She realized the house was gone. She realized she was standing on enemy territory. "Mia," she screamed, running toward me. She stopped at the edge of the stage, her hands reaching out in a begging gesture. "Mia, darling, please, you cannot do this to us. We are your parents. We gave you life. That piece of paper means nothing. It was just a formality. We love you. We have always loved you." I looked down at her. I saw the woman who had made me scrub her floors 3 days ago. I saw the woman who had laughed when I asked for help. "Klaus 4, Mom," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone, cold and unyielding. "It says the waiver is absolute. You did not love me when I was poor. You do not get to love me now that I am rich. You are party A, I am party B, and we are strangers." My mother fell to her knees beside my father, sobbing hysterically. She clutched at his arm, shaking him, begging him to fix it, but he was catatonic. And then there was Jessica. My sister had been standing frozen near the champagne tower, her face a mask of shock. But as the reality set in, the shock turned into a blind white-hot rage. She saw her future evaporating. She saw the creditors closing in. She saw the humiliation of losing everything to the sister she had bullied her entire life. She snapped. "You bitch!" she shrieked. It was a primal scream that made the guests recoil. "You stole my life! You stole my money!" She kicked off her heels. She did not run like a lady. She ran like a wild animal. She charged up the stairs of the stage, her hands curled into claws, her eyes wild with madness. "I am going to kill you!" she screamed. "Give it back! Give it back to me!" She lunged at me, reaching for my throat. I did not move. I did not flinch. I did not even blink, because I had stone. My bodyguard moved with a speed that defied his size. He did not strike her. He simply stepped in front of me like a closing blast door. Jessica slammed into his chest with a thud that echoed through the microphone. It was like watching a bird fly into a concrete wall. Stone caught her wrists before she could scratch him. He held her there effortlessly. She was thrashing, kicking, screaming, spitting foam at the mouth, but he held her as if she were an unruly child. "Let me go," she screamed, kicking at his shins. "She is a thief. She is a fraud. That money is mine. It is supposed to be mine. I am the special one. I am the winner." Stone looked at me, waiting for an order. I stepped out from behind him. I looked at my sister. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was wild, and her dress was torn. She looked exactly like the mess she really was. "You are not the winner, Jessica," I said softly. "You are just a bad investment." I signaled to Miller, the other bodyguard. "Get them out of here," I said. Miller walked over to my parents. He grabbed my father by the arm and hauled him to his feet. My father was limp, his eyes vacant. Miller grabbed my mother by the elbow. "Let's go, folks," Miller said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "The owner has asked you to leave." Stone began to drag Jessica backward. She dug her heels into the stage, leaving scratches in the wood. "No," she screamed. "No. Preston, help me. Preston, do something." She looked into the crowd, searching for her fiancé. She looked for the man who had promised to marry her, the man who was supposed to save her. Preston was standing in the front row. He was holding a glass of champagne. He looked at Jessica, screaming and thrashing. He looked at my father, being dragged away like a criminal. He looked at the legal document on the screen that proved they were penniless. Then he looked at me. He looked at the $45 million check I was holding. Preston took a sip of his champagne. He set the glass down on a passing tray, and then he turned around and walked away, disappearing into the crowd without looking back. Preston, Jessica screamed, her voice breaking. "Preston, come back." He did not stop. I watched them go. My father stumbling like a drunk, my mother wailing like a banshee, and my sister being dragged away, kicking and screaming. The three people who had defined my world, who had been the architects of my pain, were being removed from my property like bags of trash. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Nobody moved to help them. Nobody said a word. They were witnessing a public execution of a reputation, and they could not look away. I turned to Marcus. "Send a copy of that document to every bank in Seattle," I said. "I want to make sure everyone knows that Richard Miller has no access to my capital. If he tries to take out a loan using my name, I want him laughed out of the building." "Consider it done," Marcus said, closing his briefcase. I looked out at the guests. 300 people were staring at me. They were the same people who had ignored me when I was a waitress. The same people who had laughed when my father called me slow. I raised the microphone one last time. "The party is over," I said. "Please clear the driveway. My real estate agents are coming in the morning to appraise the property, and I do not want any cars blocking the view." I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a loud thud. I turned and walked off the stage, my red dress trailing behind me like a river of blood. I did not look back at the chaos I had caused. I walked toward the mansion, toward the master suite that was now mine. The king was dead. The queen had risen. And as I walked through the front doors of my new home, I finally felt something I had never felt before in this house. I felt clean. The chaos on the lawn was just beginning to settle into a stunned silence when the second wave of disaster hit. I was halfway to the main house, my heels clicking on the stone path, when I heard the commotion near the gate. I stopped and turned around. My bodyguards stopped with me, forming a protective wall, but I waved them aside. I wanted to see this. I needed to see this. 2 black SUVs had pulled up behind my convoy. They were not luxury vehicles like mine. They were heavy utilitarian trucks with tinted windows. 4 men stepped out. They were not wearing tuxedos. They were wearing cheap, ill-fitting suits, and they had the thick necks and dead eyes of men who collected debts for a living. These were not bankers. These were the hard money lenders. The sharks Jessica had borrowed from when the banks turned her down. They had been watching the live stream. They had seen the collapse of the Miller empire in real time, and like vultures circling a dying animal, they had come to pick the carcass clean before anyone else could get a bite. They marched straight onto the lawn, ignoring the security guards. They walked right up to where my father was trying to help my hysterical mother off the ground. Richard Miller, one of the men, barked. He held a tablet in his hand. My father looked up. His face was gray. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Get off my property." The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Your property," he repeated. "According to the live stream I just watched, this property belongs to your daughter Mia now, which means you are homeless. And more importantly, it means you do not have the collateral you promised us to secure your daughter Jessica's loan." Jessica stopped screaming. She looked at the men with terrified recognition. She tried to hide behind her fiancé Preston, who had been lingering near the edge of the crowd trying to call his driver. The man pointed at Jessica. "We want our money, Miss Miller," he said. $2 million principal plus accrued interest and penalties. Total due is $2.4 million. And since your father just admitted on camera that he cannot cover it, and since your sister just proved she is not liable for it, we are calling the loan. Immediately, my father tried to summon one last shred of dignity. "This is a private party," he sputtered. "We will discuss business on Monday during office hours." The man stepped closer, invading my father's personal space. "There is no Monday," he said. "We saw the documents. We saw the waiver. You are insolvent, Richard. If we do not get a wire transfer confirmation in the next hour, we are filing a lien against every single asset you have left. The cars, the jewelry, the furniture. We will strip you naked right here on this lawn." My mother let out a strangled cry. "My jewelry," she gasped, clutching her diamond necklace. "You cannot take my things." Jessica burst into tears. "Daddy, do something," she wailed. "Pay them. Just pay them so they leave." My father looked at me. He looked across the 20 feet of manicured grass that separated us. He looked at the daughter he had thrown away. He looked at the check for $45 million that was still in my hand. "Mia," he called out. His voice was broken. "Mia, please, just this once. I will pay you back. I swear. Just write them a check. They will kill us." I stood there in the wind. I felt the cold air on my skin, but inside I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a profound emptiness where my love for them used to be. I shook my head slowly. "I cannot help you, Richard." I said, using his first name for the first time. Klaus 4, remember, I am legally prohibited from mixing my assets with yours. I would not want to violate the contract you worked so hard to create. He slumped. He knew it was over. He turned to the loan shark. I do not have the cash, he whispered. Then sell something, the man said. Right now. My father looked around wildly. He looked at the guests who were watching with morbid fascination. He looked at the house. Then he looked at a man standing near the bar. It was Mr. Henderson, the real estate agent who had handled the neighborhood listings for years. Henderson, my father shouted. Henderson, get over here. Mr. Henderson walked over, looking uncomfortable. How much is the house worth? My father asked frantically. If I sell it today. Right now. Cash offer. Henderson rubbed the back of his neck. Richard, the market is soft, and with the liens you already have against it, just give me a number. My father screamed, grabbing him by the lapels. Maybe 15 million, Henderson said, if you are lucky. But after you pay off the mortgage and the capital gains tax, you might walk away with 3. 3 million, my father repeated. It was enough. It was enough to pay the sharks. But it meant losing everything else. It meant he would be left with almost nothing. No mansion, no status, no legacy. Do it, my father sobbed. Sell it. Sell it all, Jessica screamed. No, Daddy, you cannot sell the house. Where will I live? What about my image? My father spun on her. For the first time in his life, he looked at his golden child with pure hatred. Your image, he spat. Your image cost me everything, Jessica. Shut up. Just shut up. He signed the paper Henderson handed him on the back of a waiter's tray. He sold his kingdom in the mud while strangers watched. The loan shark nodded satisfied. We will take the payment directly from escrow. You have 48 hours to vacate. He signaled his men and they walked away, leaving my family in the ruins of their life. But the night was not done with them yet. Preston, the dashing lawyer, the perfect fiancé, walked back into the circle. He had finished his phone call. He looked at Jessica, who was huddled on the ground in her torn dress, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. Preston, Jessica sobbed, reaching out for him. Thank God. Take me away from here. Take me to your penthouse. I cannot stay with them anymore. They are losers. Preston took a step back, avoiding her touch as if she were contagious. Jessica, he said, his voice cool and professional. I just got off the phone with my partners. And Jessica asked, hopeful. We cannot be associated with this, he said. The fraud, the gambling debt, the public bankruptcy. It is a liability for the firm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He did not hand it to her. He just held it. I am calling off the engagement, he said. Jessica stopped breathing. What? You lied to me, Jessica, he said. You told me you were an heiress. You told me your business was profitable. You told me you brought assets to this marriage, but you bring nothing but debt and drama. Preston, please, she begged, crawling toward him on her knees in the mud. I love you. We can fix this. I do not love you, he said flatly. I love the lifestyle you promised me. He turned to the guests. The wedding is off, he announced. Please cancel your travel arrangements. He looked at me one last time. He nodded respectfully, acknowledging the power in the room. Then he walked away, disappearing into the darkness toward his waiting car. Jessica screamed. It was a sound of total devastation. She collapsed onto the grass, beating the earth with her fists. She had lost her money. She had lost her home. And now she had lost the man she thought was her prize. She was 26 years old, and she was ruined. I watched them, the 3 of them. My father sitting on a folding chair a waiter had brought him, staring blankly into space, muttering about market values. My mother weeping over her ruined shoes, trying to clean the mud off them with a napkin. And Jessica curled in a fetal position, wailing for a man who never loved her. My bodyguard Stone leaned in close to me. Do you want us to remove them now, Miss Miller? He asked. I looked at them. No, I said softly. Let them stay. Let them sit in the mess they made. They have 48 hours. After that, change the locks. I turned to walk away, but my mother looked up. She saw me leaving. Mia, she called out. Her voice was weak, raspy. Where are you going? I stopped. I turned back one last time. I am going home. Mom, I said. Home, she whispered, confusing. But this is home. No, I said. This is a house. It was never a home. I looked at the massive stone mansion one last time. It looked cold and empty like a mausoleum. I am buying Grandma Rose's cottage, I said. My mother's eyes widened. That old shack, she said. But why? You have millions. You could buy a castle. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, the first one I had felt in years. Because Grandma Rose was the only person in this family who didn't ask me for a credit check before she hugged me, I said. I remembered the smell of that cottage, cinnamon and old paper. I remembered sitting at her kitchen table while she taught me how to sew. I remembered her telling me that being smart was better than being pretty, because beauty fades, but a sharp mind cuts through anything. She was the one who bought me my first computer. She was the one who believed in me before she passed away. I am going to buy it, I said. I am going to fix the roof, I am going to plant a garden, and I am going to live there in peace. But what about us? Jessica cried, lifting her head from the mud. What will happen to us? I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had torn my suit this morning. You are smart, Jessica, I said, echoing the words they had used to mock me for years. You will figure it out. Maybe you can get a job. I hear the Emerald Motel is hiring a night receptionist. I turned around. Wait, my father called out. Mia, wait. Can we at least call you? I paused. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the business card Arthur Dawson had given me weeks ago. I wrote a number on the back. Here, I said, tossing the card onto the grass near his feet. He scrambled to pick it up. Hope flared in his eyes. Is this your new number? He asked. No, I said. That is the number for a good bankruptcy attorney. Tell him I sent you. I walked toward my car. The guests parted for me silently. They looked at me with awe and fear. I was no longer the girl in the background. I was the main character. I got into the back of the Rolls-Royce. Miller closed the door, shutting out the noise of the party, the sobbing of my family, and the whispers of the crowd. The interior was quiet and warm. Where to, Miss Miller? The driver asked. Take me to the cottage, I said. As the car pulled away, I did not look back. I did not need to see the mansion one last time. I did not need to see my parents. I left them there in the mud of their own making. I looked out at the road ahead. The streetlights were blurring past. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 29 years, the air didn't taste like guilt. It tasted like freedom. I was Mia Miller. I was the dumb one, the slow one, the scapegoat, and I had just won the game. 6 months have passed since the night the lights went out on the Miller dynasty. 6 months since I walked away from a mansion collapsing under the weight of its own lies and drove into the darkness toward a small cottage that smelled of cinnamon and memories. They say that time heals all wounds, but I have found that time does something better than healing. It clarifies. It strips away the noise until only the truth remains. And the truth is, I have never been happier. I am standing in my corner office on the 45th floor of the Nexus Tower in downtown Seattle. The view from here is breathtaking. I can see the ferry boats cutting through the gray water of the Puget Sound. I can see the mountains rising in the distance. And if I squint, I can see the neighborhood where I used to scrub toilets and wonder if I was worth the space I occupied. My assistant Sarah walks in with a steaming cup of herbal tea. She places it gently on my desk, which is made of reclaimed wood, not the heavy mahogany my father used to hide behind. Sarah smiles at me. She does not look at me with pity. She looks at me with respect. We just got the quarterly reports, Miss Miller, she says. The integration with the national shipping fleet is complete. Efficiency is up 20% across the board. The board is thrilled. And the scholarship fund applications are ready for your review. Thank you, Sarah, I say. I will take the applications now. I sit down and open the file. This is the part of my job that means the most to me. With a portion of my payout, I established the Unseen Foundation. It is a scholarship program specifically designed for young people who have been cut off by their families, who have been kicked out for being different, or who have been told they are the black sheep. I read the first letter. It is from a boy named Leo, who was thrown out of his house at 18 because he wanted to be an artist instead of a doctor. He is living in his car. He is talented. He is hungry, and he thinks his life is over. I pick up my pen and write approved across the top of his application. We will pay for his tuition. We will pay for his housing. We will give him the one thing my family never gave me, a chance. People ask me sometimes if I miss them. They ask if I miss the holidays or the Sunday dinners. And I tell them honestly that you cannot miss a mirage. The family I thought I had never existed. They were just a group of people held together by vanity and greed. Once the money was gone, the glue dissolved. I heard through the grapevine what happened to them. It is a small city, and gossip travels faster than light. After the party, the bank seized everything. My father tried to declare bankruptcy, but the fraud investigation regarding the loan he tried to pin on me made that impossible. They lost the mansion. They lost the cars. They lost the club memberships. My parents moved to a small 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb 2 hours away. My father works as a consultant, but nobody will hire him because his reputation is toxic. My mother spends her days posting cryptic messages on Facebook about betrayal and ungrateful children. They tried to call me once a month ago. A blocked number. I answered it by mistake. Mia, my father's voice said. It sounded old and thin. We were just thinking about you. We miss you. I did not say anything. I just pressed the red button and blocked the number. I do not owe them my voice. I do not owe them my time. The contract is absolute. I finish my work as the sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I pack my bag. I do not take a limousine home. I drive myself. I bought a car that I love. It is not a Rolls-Royce to show off to the neighbors. It is a vintage convertible restored to perfection. It is a car for driving, not for being seen. I drive out of the city garage and merge onto the highway. I am heading to the cottage. I spent the last 6 months renovating it. I fixed the roof. I planted a garden full of the hydrangeas Grandma Rose loved. I painted the kitchen yellow. It is small, it is cozy, and it is filled with peace. There is no yelling. There is no judgment. Just me and the quiet hum of a life I built with my own hands. The traffic is heavy tonight. The rain has started again, a soft drizzle that turns the streetlights into blurry stars. I decide to take the surface streets to avoid the jam. The route takes me through a part of town I rarely visit anymore. It is a commercial district filled with strip malls and discount stores. It is the kind of place where people go when they are counting every penny. I am stopped at a red light. The rhythm of the windshield wipers is hypnotic. I look out the passenger window. There is a bus stop on the corner. It is just a metal bench with a plastic shelter that has been tagged with graffiti. A woman is sitting there. She is huddled inside a thin beige coat that looks not quite warm enough for the weather. She has 2 plastic grocery bags at her feet. She is staring at her phone, the screen glowing on her tired face. My heart gives a strange little jump. I know that profile. I know the way she holds her head. It is Jessica. I lower my window just a crack. The air is cold and damp. I look closer. It is definitely her, but she looks different. The blonde hair that used to be blow-dried to perfection is pulled back in a messy ponytail. She's wearing no makeup. Her shoes are sensible flats, not the towering heels she used to run in. She looks older. She looks worn down by the friction of a life that did not go according to plan. I watch her for a moment. She looks up from her phone and peers down the street looking for the bus. She looks impatient. She looks cold. Memories flood back to me. I remember her laughing at me when I had to take the bus to college because they wouldn't buy me a car. I remember her driving past me in her Mercedes, splashing water on me as I walked to the stop. I remember her telling me that public transport was for losers. Now here she is, waiting for the number 42 line to take her back to whatever small life she has managed to scrape together. Preston is gone. The fashion line is gone. The arrogance is gone. All that is left is a woman waiting for a ride in the rain. A part of me, the old part, the part that was trained to be a servant, wonders if I should stop. I could pull over. I could offer her a ride. I could write her a check. It would be so easy for me. It would be pocket change. I could be the savior. I could be the bigger person. But then I remember the garage. I remember the torn suit. I remember her screaming at the bodyguards to arrest me. I remember her trying to steal my future, to pay for her mistakes. If I stop, I rob her of the lesson. If I save her, I confirm her belief that someone will always be there to clean up her mess. The light turns green. Jessica looks toward my car. She sees the sleek lines of the vintage convertible. She sees the woman behind the wheel in the tailored coat. For a second, our eyes meet through the rain and the glass. I see a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Her mouth opens slightly. She takes a step forward as if she's about to wave, as if she is about to ask for help. I do not look away. I do not frown. I do not sneer. I simply smile. It is a small, polite smile, the kind you give to a stranger. I shift gears. I press my foot down on the gas pedal. The engine purrs a deep, throaty sound of power. I drive past her. I do not speed up to splash her. I do not honk. I just keep moving forward. I watch her in my rearview mirror. She stands there on the curb watching me go. She looks small. She gets smaller and smaller until she is just a blur of beige against the grey concrete. And then I turn the corner and she is gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turn up the radio. The song playing is upbeat and loud. I tap my fingers on the steering wheel. I am going home to my yellow kitchen. I am going home to my life. I realize something in that moment. The opposite of love is not hate. Hate still requires energy. Hate still creates a bond. The opposite of love is indifference. And as I drive away, leaving my sister in the rain, I feel absolutely nothing but the joy of the road ahead. The rear-view mirror is for checking traffic. It is not for looking back at the past. If you are listening to this story right now, I want you to know something. I want you to know that the pain you are feeling, the rejection, the loneliness, it is not the end of your story. It is the beginning. Sometimes the family you are born into is not your destiny. Sometimes they are just your first test. They are the fire that burns away the weakness so that the steel underneath can shine. My parents called me the dumb one. They called me the slow one. They tried to make me their scapegoat, but in doing so, they forced me to build a muscle they never had. The muscle of survival. They thought they were burying me, but they didn't know I was a seed. Do not let anyone define your worth. Do not let anyone tell you that you are broken just because you do not fit into their picture. You are not a supporting character in their movie. You are the director of your own. If your family has turned their back on you, let them. Turn around and face the world. There is so much love out there waiting for you. There is so much success waiting for you. But you have to be willing to let go of the hand that is hurting you to reach for it. Abandonment can be a gift. It is the gift of freedom. It is the gift of knowing that everything you build from this day forward belongs 100% to you. I look at the road stretching out in front of me. The rain has stopped. The clouds are breaking apart, and the moon is shining through full and bright. I am Mia Miller, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever felt like the outcast, if you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever had to fight for your place in the world, I want to hear from you. Go to the comments section right now and type 2 words. I am worthy. Say it for yourself. Say it for the child in you who needs to hear it. I am worthy. And if this story gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they are strong enough to survive. I am going to go home now. I have a garden to tend to, and tomorrow I have a world to change. Take care of yourselves. You are worth more than you know. Good night.